Ready. We are going to have to start the meeting because of governance rules. So I will ask the CEO to reread item 1, the recording and live streaming of council meetings.
All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however audio from the entire room is captured. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable and to improve transparency of council's decision-making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. For those of you capable, would you please stand and I will read the acknowledgement of traditional custodians. Alpine Shire acknowledges the Taungurung peoples as the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are meeting today. Council also acknowledges all of the traditional custodians of the wider lands of the area known as the Alpine Shire. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Thank you very much. Be seated. All right, item 3, confirmation of minutes. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Janus, Councillor Keeble. Show of hands, all those in favour of that. Thank you very much, and we have that unanimous. Item 4, apologies. I believe we have nil apologies from our team tonight. Obituaries and congratulations, item 5, and I will start on my right with Councillor Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Mayor. I just want to congratulations tonight. Councillor Janus and I, together with Dr. Helen Haynes, our federal member for Indi, we had the pleasure of opening the towards renewable energy Kiwa facility last Friday at Mount Beauty. It's a terrific installation, 23 kilowatt solar sitting on the stadium there and a 33 kilowatt battery to support it. It was the TREC team that really made this project happen, and the funding was from Bushfire Recovery Grants Program. The site is a place of last resort, so this is a great way to improve the resilience of the site should it be cut off. A good battery supply for at least 2 days there. But it's also a great step. I know the Upper Kiwa community are very focused on sustainable energy supply, and so it's a great step forward for them in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Nicholas.
Yes, I have a few things this evening. I'd like to start with an obituary and mention the passing of Dave Weston from Harrietville. Much loved son, brother, friend and community member. And I wanted to really reflect on not just the contribution that Dave made in his life to his family and the local community, particularly as a chef, but the strength of the Harrietville community pulling together to support the Weston family and help the whole community move on. And then I'm going to congratulations.
Thank you.
The group Resilient Alpine Youth Squad that is supported and run by the Alpine Shire through some funding from other governments, ran an emergency services careers expo recently. It was postponed from one rainy day to another rainy day, and it rained all day, and it was really cold and wet. But I think 150 kids came from local schools around the area and looked at CFA and SES and Ambulance Victoria and etc. And it was a really good day. I'm still getting feedback from young people and their parents about how much they appreciated understanding a bit more about what emergency services do and what the opportunities are for careers. So well done to the youngsters who organised that and our staff. And I also wanted to congratulate both the Alpine Shire and a community group call themselves the Muggers for washing dishes at the Make It, Bake It, Grow It market. They've been doing it for quite a long time. I did my first day last time the market was on, and we washed, I haven't got the numbers, something like 230 mugs and 170 plates or something. So these are all things that didn't therefore go to landfill. And I just really commend the Alpine Shire for stepping forward and organising the Dish Pig and the group of community people who are trying to move us into the new world where we don't use throwaway stuff.
Thank you. Councillor Prime, I know that I can see Councillor Prime. Sorry, you guys, you can't. Do you have any obituaries or congratulations tonight?
No, none from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Did everybody hear Councillor Prime? Good, because she may be part of the conversations later. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. Congratulations to Team May Beauty for the opening of their pump track on the weekend, and everyone who was involved in that development. It makes a great addition to that part of Mount Beauty for young and old. I even got a chance to scoot around a few laps on my bike. I didn't run into anyone, so that was good.
So this is young or an old?
No, I think I was definitely the eldest person on the track. And it was from Bushfire Recovery Fund. That's where it came from. AGL provided some funds as well as the Alpine Shire. So well done to Team Mount Beauty and to the officers in Alpine Shire who worked alongside the team to get that project done. Thanks.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A few things from me. Just wanting to condolences to the Alexander family and extended family for the passing of Mish. It has had a flow-on effect in the community, so just urging anybody who needs help or wants to talk about anything, but there are many different avenues that people can go through in order to do that, and I really hope that as a community we all band together to help everyone through these sad times. But on a good note, I've got two congratulations. One is for the council staff members who have been involved in some very out of the ordinary circumstances when it's come to some housing of vicious dogs. It has been a process and a half, and being a local government, there are situations that you have to go through in a legislative manner, and then you have the emotions of people in the community to be involved in that as well. Many discussions had, but a result that has essentially had an outcome for the community in favour. So a massive shout out to all the staff that was involved with that and the way they handled the situation and the communications with that as well. But a big shout out to all the Year 12s who are in the middle of exams, if not finishing. It's a huge year. Been there and done that, and I just know that these kids are super resilient, and just wishing everyone the best of luck, and emotions will be flying high because I'd say there will be some sleepless nights, but congrats to everyone involved with all of that and anyone that has got them through to that point as well.
Councillor Janus.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's some matters you may be attending or mentioning later in relation to Bright, but I'll just mention the Myrtleford show that occurred on the weekend and what a great success that was. My feedback was it's one of the best shows I've had for a long time. A lot of visitors came to the area, a lot of events. We even had the privilege of having some members of the 4th 19th Light Horse attend and interact with the public, and want to thank the staff of the Alpine Shire for mowing and preparing the overflow car park, which is a first, and that was as a result of last year the Shire President the show president having to hop on a Deutsch tractor and pull half the car park out of the mud. Thank God she was a farming lady who knew what she was doing, but it worked very well, and the Show Society are very grateful to the Alpine Shire and staff for that overflow car park and the support that they've given to the Myrtleford show. It's one of the we only have a few events in Myrtleford, and that's one of our bigger ones. So well done to the committee and to our staff.
Thanks, Councillor Janus. I have a couple tonight. Firstly, I would just go back 2 or 3 weeks. The Mount Beauty Writers Festival Congratulations to Faye and Mandy for organising such a great event, and for the coup of having Costa from Gardening Australia there as one of the writers. It was a very good event, very well attended, and it's something that's now on the calendar in Mount Beauty as a cultural event. The second one regards the freedom of entry on Saturday morning, and the opinion is that we probably saw 500 or 600. I reckon I counted 1,000 people down in the main street of Bright attending the freedom of entry, which was a spectacle in itself. So it was the 4th 19th. Bright, as a township, has offered the freedom of entry to the 4th 19th as part of the Bright RSL 100th anniversary. So congratulations to President Phil, and in particular the council staff, Council Officer Sarah Matthews, for actually organising this. I will say that it's really interesting when you listen to everything that was said on that day, that Bright's been elevated to the position of a city. I think that was quite impressive. On the night, Saturday night, I attended the regimental dinner, which was held at the community centre, and I received, on behalf of Bright citizens, the plaque from the 8th 13th Victorian Mounted Rifles, and I'll read to you what the plaque actually says. Commemorating the Bright Troop of the Indi Light Horse and marking the freedom of entry of the 4th 19th Prince of Wales Light Horse Regiment, the 28th of October 2023, presented by the 8th 13th Victorian Mounted Rifles Association. That plaque, I believe, has already been positioned, and it is down in Mafeking Square. So I think that's something, if you're down the street, just go and have a wander and have a look at that. On that... Oh yes, the other thing, note the name, Prince of Wales Light Horse Regiment. Throughout the world, in all of the Commonwealth countries and including England, the 4th 19th is the only regiment that still has the Prince of Wales name attached to it. And subsequently, one of the commanding officers that was there on Saturday night mentioned that he was talking to a 2-star general on Sunday who has to report back to head office in London on what's happening in the regiments around the place, and so Bright will be getting a mention with either the King or the Prince of Wales in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I thought that was quite good. Okay. Item 6, declaration of councillors of any conflicts of interest. Do I thank you, Councillor Keeble, and
thanks.
the item number is?
Item number, Mayor Forsyth, is 9.1.4.
9.1.4, thank you. Now we're on to public questions. As I mentioned to you earlier, we get questions on notice which are written and sent in to council officers prior to, what time have we got at the moment, 5 o'clock on a Monday? Right, prior to close of business on the Monday prior to the council meeting. So we have tonight two people that have written in questions, or actually 3. So I will start, and look, just if you are in the room with these, would you just mind identifying yourself? Claire Johnson. No, not here tonight. Right. Questions on notice. Question 1. Would the council please substantiate why it suggests the preliminary heritage assessment by GML, which is a consultancy firm in Melbourne, I believe, is benign and unactionable using the guise of draft report or working document, when in fact councils across Victoria commonly use equivalent preliminary assessments to form the basis of interim protections. This is to do with the assessment of the gateway trees to Bright for either heritage or some form of protection. So could I hand this to Director of Assets, Mr. Alan Rees, please?
Thank you, Mayor Forsyth. This report remains a working document, and we understand the interest that it has arisen from its inception. However, we request community members to please remain patient while we work through the process.
The follow-up question to that one is, given the preliminary heritage assessment by GML indicates the gateway trees meet the threshold for protection and recommends conducting a detailed assessment, will the Alpine Shire Council explain precisely how the trees will be protected until that detailed assessment is complete and demonstrate how the delay in applying protections is not intended to favour the Bright Valley developer? Mr Rees.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Leading on from the previous response, council officers are working through the planning permit assessment and a recommendation will be brought to council in due course.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. Applicant 2 or questions 2 from Paul Stewart in the room and his wife, Diane. So, question 1. This is relating to the NRMA Caravan Park. Who are the active participants on the Committee of Management overseeing the NRMA Bright Caravan Park? Again, I think it's Mr Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So Alpine Shire Council is appointed as the land manager, or termed the Committee of Management by DECA. Alpine Shire Council is appointed as an organisation and various officers follow DECA's policies and guidelines on Crown land and must comply with all relevant legislation and other statutory requirements and regulations that may apply. So in specific terms, Council's Property and Major Contracts Coordinator is responsible for the relationship with the NMRA and liaises with various council officers, being subject matter experts and functional specialists, such as civil engineering for road and drainage requirements, arborists for tree management, civil works for example, perimeter fencing requirements, a building maintenance coordinator for building matters, and a range of other people that do get drawn in to deal with matters relating to the park.
Don't go away, Mr Rees. The second question from Mr Paul Stewart is, what evidence is there of oversight communications and forward planning communications between the Alpine Shire and NRMA Bright Caravan Park?
Thanks, Mayor. So Council works with the NMRA to ensure the responsibilities of the lease are met by both parties. And as an example, here are sort of the types of things that occur during the course of a year. There are a range of ad hoc meetings which are arranged to discuss maintenance issues as they arise, such as perimeter fencing, drainage, tree maintenance, etc. Various maintenance responsibilities that are outlined in the lease. In addition, there's an annual tree inspection which is conducted by the NMRA and submitted to Council, where we assess and ensure that the very high risk and high risk works are attended to by the NMRA from a safety perspective. Council also works with the NMRA as needed to assess annual van sites when they come up for sale as part of the lease agreement. NMRA may also contact Council throughout the year for land manager consent for a range of matters such as planning permits or to ask permission for work to be done on Council land. In addition to this, Council conducts a market review of the rent paid by NMRA, which is a requirement under the lease on a 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 and 18-year period across the lease. We're currently in the process of a market review at this point. And Council also has responsibilities in the lease for capital improvement expenditure, which is then done on a 5-year basis throughout the lease period. So in summary, Mayor, there is a range of touch points throughout the course of the year to ensure that both parties are meeting the terms and requirements of their lease.
Thank you. Now there's a question now from Diane Stewart. Is there a ratio requirement of caravan to camping to cabin and permanents to non-permanents at the NRMA Bright Caravan Park? Mr Rees.
Thank you, Mayor. So probably a bit of clarification around the terminology I think is important. So firstly, there is no ratio requirement in the lease or from DECA for caravan to camping to cabin site numbers. And also, just for clarification, there are no permanent sites. There are only casual, seasonal and 12-month permits. And no, there are no ratios of casual to seasonal to 12-month permits in the lease. By way of just further clarification, in terms of the proportion of sites, camping sites and cabins, in the lease it states that the tenant must obtain the landlord's approval prior to varying the existing proportion of cabins versus camping sites by more than 20%. And for clarification, as I've learned in getting my head around how caravan parks operate, cabins are what they call hard top accommodation, so physical cabins with self-contained, non-movable, permanent dwellings, and camping sites refer to both caravan and traditional soft tent camping sites.
Thank you. Could I just get a little bit of clarification on one of the things you said, if you can answer? And that is, the question here is there a ratio requirement of caravan to camping to cabin? And you mentioned as part of the lease that if there is a 20% change in one of those, then the landowner has to be consulted. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Right. So if it's a 20% change, how did the original figures start?
I'd have to take that on notice, Mayor. I don't know the history of how the distribution of various accommodation has unfolded on that particular site.
Thank you. Okay. There was one other question on notice which actually came in late, and it's regarding the Bright River Pool, which is an item that is on discussion and on our agenda tonight. So I'm sure that that question will actually be answered during that discussion. I will now call upon the floor for questions that they might wish to ask of council, and hopefully either council, if councillors can't answer the questions, hopefully our directors and executive staff can answer those questions for you. For those that have been here before, please you come up to the lectern here. There is a microphone. Just state your name and where you're from, and 2 questions only, and I will hold you to that. So, who would like to start? It should be green, not red, I think. Is there a little switch down there?
My name's David Fisher. I'm here talking about the Bright Camping and Caravan Reserve. My question will be for Mr. Rees, I think. My understanding is that the council has been appointed as the land manager, committee and manager for DECA and have responsibilities under the 1978 Act for Crown Land. And the council also has responsibilities as a council under the Residential Tenancy Act for caravan parks and issues the licence to caravan parks, which would be also the caravan park at Bright. My question is that sometime in the past, the Residential Tenancy Act actually states under Section 29 that the facilities of the caravan park, which is toilet blocks, and it's a rather large paragraph, boils down to basically for every 10 sites there needs to be either a shower or a toilet. I asked the council every 3 years, the council is responsible for issuing a licence to the caravan park under the Act, under this rule, and how the caravan park is compliant, because I've just done through some numbers. There are 9. There's 9 showers on the Cobden Street side of the caravan park, which is divided in 2 halves by a creek, and there's 170 sites, camping sites. That's not 1 in 10.
So your question, Mr. Fisher?
My question is, where are the reports and how can the caravan park be compliant? And as a committee of management, why isn't after 10 years the caravan park and the toilet blocks been upgraded?
Okay, good question. Is that a question on notice, I think, Mr. Rees, or not?
Yes, thanks very much, David. I'll have to take that one on notice.
Would you like a reply direct to you?
No, I'd like to actually to go back into the public record, so if you want to go through to Brodie at the local paper, that'd be fine. I think this is an important thing of
It's important for you. It's important for you.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I'll get my email address, yeah.
Yeah, look, in this instance, I think, David, what would happen is when we get that information and we're clear on that information,
Yep.
I think we'll share it with you. You're
All right.
more than welcome to take it to the media if you wish.
All right. Thank you.
Okay? Any other questions?
No, that's it.
That's it. All right. Anybody else? I know you have quite a contingent here, I believe. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Noel McKay. Got two questions in relation to the same topic, the NRMA and the caravan park. With all the changes that are coming in regards to cabins and everything that are going on or that will be going on, first question is, what planning information was provided to the Committee of Management in regards to the approval of the construction of the 4 glamping tents that were built, which have sat there, which from our calculation has taken over, the 4 sites took over 11 sites, of which nobody's been on those for 3 years, and they're just sitting there doing nothing, and we understand that it's a permit issue.
Yep.
That's the first question.
That's the first question.
And the second question is the council able to provide the audits that should be carried out on the caravan park each year in regards to relation to all of the things on the sites as well?
Sure, which is relating back to what...
They're all tied in together.
They're all tied in.
Bit
Okay,
tied in.
I think Mr Rees again on this, or will this be... No, sorry. Ms Havercroft, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Noel. With regards to the planning, so there has been some planning issues with regards to the safari tents that are along the creek front. They continue, so until that time that they're resolved, they can't be they're not habitable. And as we work through that, they're in that position and they're a little bit untidy right now. But we're working through what the solution might be once we get through all of the planning issues that are still present in that place.
So in some respects, that's council actually doing its job correctly.
Yeah, it is. No,
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. Okay.
That was good.
All right. Thank you very much, Noel. Thank you. Now, anybody else? Certainly. Please step up, Mr Dyer. Can you hear? He is addressing us. I'm sorry. This is a council meeting. He is addressing the councillors from the public. Thank you.
My name's Ray Dyer and I reside at Buffalo River. Now, this question I've asked twice already at council meetings. Maybe I might get the answer this month. And as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't be classed as a question. I should have another 2 questions after this.
Try your luck, Ray.
All right,
Please
no problem. The recycling in the towns of the Alpine Shire, and I mentioned, does it go straight into the skip bins? And I haven't had a definite answer, yes or no, and I believe it does go in the skip bins and it goes over the Chuka to the land waste. So that's the first question. Does it or does not the recycling that you collect in the bins in the towns, the townships, that say recycling and general rubbish, it all goes in the one bin? Yes or no?
Just let's have your other 2 questions. We'll get to that one.
Okay. My next question is, I think I spoke to you. You mentioned about this, Mr Mayor, was matters arising from previous minutes.
Yes.
And I've spoken about the council minutes not being correct over the last 15 or 17 years. And I can go on several occasions where it's not correct. And I believe that if you had the matters arising from previous minutes, you might not be in the position you are now.
I would like to direct you to item 1 on the agenda, where it specifically states obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. There is minutes, and they are a YouTube recording. However, the written minutes are the legal document, apparently.
That's right. Sorry to talk over you, Mr Mayor, but the written minutes are the legal documents, and you don't fully fill them out, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to matters arising from previous minutes.
That is simply according to the governance rules at Alpine Shire. Okay, your next question, I won't call it your third question, otherwise I'll be going against what I've already said.
All right. I spoke to Will Genvy, the CEO, about November last year about the standards of the maintenance of the toilets in Myrtleford. Also the garbage bins around the township, and also the barbecues. I didn't say much about the barbecues, but as far as I'm concerned, they're an absolute disgrace.
So your question?
Is when are they going to be maintained and cleaned properly? And that goes for the whole Shire, not just Myrtleford.
Thank you. I do believe that there is a maintenance schedule on all of these things. I don't know how long it is between. I do believe that that maintenance schedule is ramped up during the high and peak seasons.
I was told by Will that you were talking about getting a new contractor nearly 12 months ago, and the contractor's still there now, not doing the job properly, well and truly. When you have possum poo all over the barbecues in Jubilee Park there, it's an absolute disgrace. And as a matter of fact, the barbecues, I've gone there a few times around 10 o'clock in the morning, and the barbecues are actually going.
Thank you. Do we have a question from an answer for the first question regarding the skip bins?
So Alan can respond to 1 and 3.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Mayor. So just on the recycling of, or how we treat the waste from public bins, there are recycling bins and general waste bins, as you correctly point out. The contractor collects the refuse from both of those and inspects them for contamination, and the level of contamination determines whether or not it is eligible for recycling or whether the waste goes directly into landfill. We do know that the contamination rates from our public bins is very high, so a significant amount of that waste, which ideally would be recyclable, is unfortunately not due to contamination. We're working on an education program to see what we can do to help the public make informed choices. But this is not only unique to our council area. Public bins and contamination is a challenge in public locations.
I'm also talking about the cleanliness of the bins, which I said to Will at the time, the CEO, that they should be steam cleaned. That's how disgusting they are in Myrtleford, and they're still like that nearly 12 months later.
It's part of the maintenance schedule, I believe. Thank you, Mr. Dyer.
Maintenance schedule. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will say thank you also to Mr. Dyer, though, and that is he's raised a very important point which has just been clarified by Mr. Rees, and that is that the public are really they're uneducated as far as recycling goes. If we just venture to Europe, they have 6 bins and people know what to do. If you walk around outside in this area here, we've got 2 bins at the moment. There may be a glass bin coming. So it's an education piece. If you or anybody sees people disposing of rubbish incorrectly, please just remind them of what to do. Did you want to follow up, Mr. Ray, very quickly?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. You know, I asked 3 questions and I'm still not the wiser.
Right, we will take it on. Sorry, Councillor Kelly, would you like to say something?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, Mr. Dyer, just in regards to your question on the governance rules and how things are recorded, I don't think I'm disclosing too much to say. We recently had a law firm perform a review and give some advice on how our levels of disclosure compared to other local government areas in the state and our governance rules are performing. I think the feedback was it's a pretty clean bill of health. We have a pretty high standard. Please, we'll stick to the 2 questions rule. And that was one of the feedback items, in fact, about how much engagement we do have in these forums. So I'm not sure it completely satisfies your perspective on how the minutes are recorded, but hopefully it gives you some assurance that we do continually look at these things.
Look, it's all good. I've been stonewalled for about the last 17 years by the Alpine Shire, so
Thanks, Mr. Dyer.
they're very good at it.
Thank you. Anybody else from the floor would like a question? Yes, please. Thank you.
Hi everybody, it's Dean Enders. I reside in Port Punker. I'm just here tonight just because I heard about the Port Punker, the Bright Diving Board looking at being taken away. I believe it's been a great asset for the whole town. It's iconic and it's a great thing to do with the kids. I believe if you do a risk assessment on anything these days, that it'll probably shut down. I personally know 3 people who've nearly died in the last year on the mountain bike park. One chef from the brewery had 20% of her spleen removed. Another person a broken back. Another person took a year to get their memory back. So I don't believe that's the right going forward. Have you done a risk assessment on the mountain bike park? Should we close that?
Is that your first question?
Yes, my first question would like to know, do you have to do a risk assessment on the mountain bike park or pump tracks? Because they would surely be closed down too.
Certainly. Do you have 2 questions or not?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, second question.
And my second one was just regarding the rubbish too. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go too hard. But I know the contracts have been given to people that are obviously in Melbourne, am I correct? Companies in Melbourne? Am I correct in saying that?
People works.
In Bright and Mount Beauty's contracts are both being given to Melbourne companies?
The company does have an office in Wodonga, and that's where their local branch is based.
I just think it's sad that Peter that did it here and the Mount Beauty gentleman that did it did a really good job and did nothing wrong, and the money stayed in the town when you pay them their kids here and they spend the money here, and they had more care and pride in their work. So my question is, why do we have these contracts going to out of town Melbourne, or they're effectively Melbourne?
So 2 questions. Why are the contracts going out
So
of
the first
town?
one's about the pool, yes, about risk
First one about the pool.
And do you think by taking the swimming pool away, you're increasing the risk of kids potentially looking for other areas to jump off down and below the river?
Look, I'm sure, Dean, as I said, regarding the late question that came through on notice, all of those things are going to be discussed when we reach that item tonight.
I thought...
No, it's on the agenda tonight, so it will be discussed. And councillors will discuss it, and everything that you've said so far I've been hearing.
Well, the question about the risk assessment, will they be doing do you do a risk assessment on the mountain bike park was my specific question.
So that specific question, do we do a risk? Very good question.
Because I know from the Ice Creamery, I've seen numerous people with busted shoulders. As I said, 3 near deaths. I'm just wondering.
At the moment, Alpine Shire Council does not actually operate the mountain bike park. ACP does.
Have they done a risk assessment?
I'm not privy to that, but there is one of the directors of ACP here who could answer that question for you, Mr. Rees.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Yes, ACP has conducted a risk assessment, and there is an extensive program of work to do maintenance and upgrades on the trails based on that risk assessment.
I think the injuries would be significantly more coming out of the mountain bike park than a diving board.
I understand the analogy that you are drawing between mountain biking and swimming. I understand.
It's just a risk assessment thing. I mean, we can go overboard with this. I mean, I'm sure the pump track in Mount Beauty would be closed down if we had a risk assessment.
Tonight we will deal with the Bright River Pool. And the second question was
why do we not employ the local people that have lived here the whole life to have the contract and done good jobs and always had the staff and done a competent job? Why didn't they outsource?
I think I can answer this simply for you, and that is that council, when it grants contracts, looks for best value at the time, best value and also for the ratepayer, because at the end of the day, the ratepayer is the one that's paying for that particular thing. Now, when that contract was let, at that particular time, all of the indications were that the contractor was going to do the job correctly. Since then, we have had a bit of problem with that, and other contractors have been brought in. I believe we're issuing a new contract soon.
We're in the process of evaluating the recent tender.
Right. Okay, and I believe there's probably more than one tender.
Maybe sometimes they take the middle value to stop the cheapest one, which often doesn't give you the results.
I agree, and that comes back to council when we're looking at it as well. All right.
All.
Thank you very much, Dean.
Can I just add to that too, Dean,
Councillor Nichols?
and others? We do have a local content social score or criteria in the assessment process. So people who live locally don't necessarily fall off the bottom just because they charge more if they do. If that makes sense. So.
They've all gone here in Mount Beauty, the money goes out of the valley. They've done nothing wrong with the job. They've done a competent job and they're good workers.
Understood.
And now we're having these issues since the new contract's been applied, and I just think if it's not broken, why fix it? That's all. And keep, employing local people.
Yep, understood.
Thank you. Any others from the floor? Yes, certainly. Please come forward.
Margaret Wilson. I've been a local here since I was 3. I'd just like to ask, only hearing about the river diving board at 11 o'clock last night, what will be covered in this discussion tonight, and I think it's a fait accompli, the diving board will be removed before Christmas. Will we be allowed to talk about this at this section when it comes or not?
That is not part of normal council procedures that you do get to talk about an agenda item. That is for councillors to talk about and to make a decision on.
I finish. I've said my piece.
Thank you, Margaret.
Can I just interject there, please, Mr.
So,
Mayor?
yes, actually, someone will reply to you now, Margaret, and that would be Councillor Hughes.
I haven't started speaking yet, Marg, sorry. Okay.
It's because that's on.
It might be the heaters. So just with discussion points on topics that we have in our ordinary council meeting, us as councillors are approachable at any time via email, via meeting, via phone conversations. I've had many phone conversations yesterday, today, a couple of meetings down the street on this very topic itself.
So what can we do?
So us as councillors, we are taking all of the information on board in order to make our decision tonight. But as Mr Mayor has noted, we're going to be discussing that and everything that's in that when it comes to the information that is at that agenda item. So it's not being ignored.
Margaret?
We have been approachable since this has come out on the agenda for discussion.
We just heard about it. How did we know? Mr Mayor, how did we know about this?
Margaret?
It's 2 days ago. 2 days ago.
This particular thing is not it is not actually a community consultation situation. All right? However, let me just remind you that the 7 councillors sitting up here are also members of the community. They understand what you are talking about, all of you, and they will make decisions based on the best knowledge that they have at the time and the risks involved and what that will possibly mean for the community and for the reputation of the Alpine Shire. So that is where councillors sit. And that discussion will now come forward, and if you would like to stay in the room to listen to that discussion, you're more than welcome.
No, I won't be waiting, but I would just like to say, since the lifeguards have been in place, is the only time this has been documented, and parents have to be responsible for kids going to...
I can't agree with you more.
And now the lifeguards are there, it's worse, because the parents say, oh, they're going to watch them.
This comes back to what I said with the last speaker, and that is education of the community and a little bit of community responsibility as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you, Margaret. Any other questions from the floor? Yes, thank you. I'll remind people it's 5:51. I will close this question time at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Council. My name is Bruce Hoare. I'm representing the Brighton District Chamber of Commerce. I would like to at least get the question on record in regards to the swimming facility. Could councillors please explain what alternatives, especially engaging with people of cultural and linguistic divergence, have been considered and assessed as an alternative to outright closing the jumping platform and ceasing dredging at the Bright River Precinct? what has changed between the previous Life Saving Victoria report and the new one, and what risks and impacts were considered in regards to economic impacts with return visitation, and moving the problem of safety of river users to areas outside of council protection, leading to reputational risk.
So is there more than two questions in there, Bruce?
It's one question. One question.
One very long question.
It's a very complicated issue.
It is a very complicated issue.
So
yes.
I just want to get that on record.
Thank you.
Because hopefully we'll get the answers out of the session in a bit.
Yes.
The second one is in relation to the land development strategy. In relation to commercial growth of export industries that aren't reliant on tourism in the valleys, it appears that all the commercial growth is planned for the sheds area in Myrtleford. What consideration has been made in regards to creating commercial growth areas elsewhere in the valley to better harness available business networks and workforce availability?
I think that will also come out in the discussion regarding the land development strategy as to what it is and what it isn't. So yes, I think that will come out again in discussion tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I believe there was one more.
Hi, Mr Mayor and councillors. My name's Kerry Foreman. I have a 12-monthly dwelling, as you call it, at the NRMA Caravan Park. As you can see, there's many people here that are in the same position as myself. You mentioned earlier that those glamping tents are under permits which are overseen by the council. So my question is, if some of us are getting kicked out and others have been told to move, just curious, do you guys give us the permit to say, yes, it's approved? Who gives us the permit once we move our caravan to another site? Is it NRMA, the caravan park, or do the council oversee it?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So Mr Rees might be able to answer that question for you.
Yes, please.
Thank you for your question. So the arrangement that...
It's a very messy arrangement,
so,
from what I can see, between the council and the caravan park and the residents.
So as we discussed earlier, explained earlier, there are three types of...
Yes, I understand that.
Casual, seasonal and 12-month permits.
Yes.
And those are relationships between the tenants and the NMRA, and there are contractual arrangements in place in order to manage those.
You oversee those, don't you?
It's an operational matter that is handled by the operator, not council.
Okay, so another question is then, do council get any revenue from the caravan park?
Rental.
Yes, we do.
You do. So you actually, you oversee the caravan park. You're meant to have... Okay, there's three questions. Okay, that's fine. Go for it. I'll come to the next meeting.
Maybe to clarify
and we'll make sure we have more. That's okay.
There is a commercial lease agreement in place between council as the Committee of Management and the operator.
Yes, so is that available? How much is actually made out of all the caravan parks that you oversee?
I'm afraid I'd have to take that on notice.
Okay.
I couldn't respond in a moment.
Okay. Yep.
The arrangement between council and the NMRA or any operator has a commercial arrangement where we charge rent for them to be able to operate that park.
Yep. Okay. So you'll get back to me on the other questions?
Yes, I think we've got a record of that question. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you very much.
If you would like a reply by email, would you like to give your email address to Mr Rees?
Yes, I will, yeah.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor.
Yes.
Just one more thing.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Just on question time at council, our ordinary council meeting, it is limited to two questions. Yep. However, you can write 20 questions in an email that will all be answered as well, and you can CC all councillors in on that to be privy to that information as well. So just wanted to point out that you don't have to hold your question time for an ordinary council meeting where 50% of the time you might not actually be able to get your response because we have to look for it, but you are welcome to email questions outside of an ordinary council meeting process.
Okay, I do know that other people have emailed before, and once the question gets a little bit too difficult, it gets dismissed.
Thank you. Anybody else? One more. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dean Freeland. By way of background, my wife and I own 2 retail stores in the centre of Bright. We have door counters for people that are coming into the door, and we have experienced approximately a 60% reduction in the number of people coming into the door over the last 6 months. For both, well, for one shop in particular. My first question is, does the council collect any numbers on visitations into town and publish those figures? Rough figures, for example, could be visits to the information centre. My second question is, has there been any research into the long-term effects of policies such as removing the jumping boards on local tourism numbers and the reputation of Bright as a holiday destination?
Thank you, Ian, is it?
Dean.
Dean, sorry. Thank you, Dean. As an ex-retailer, I understand where you're coming from. I don't know. The statistics are kept, and VICs, visitor information centres, do actually collect some statistics. I would assume, and you've got the gentleman sitting right behind you there, Mr Hoare from the Bright Chamber of Commerce, they would have access to a lot of those figures as well. And if you're not a member of that, then probably no? Okay.
I am a member of that, but I guess the pointed part of that is the second question about research into long-term effects of policies.
It's very hard. You can do speculation. I don't believe you can do research into the future. That's my simple answer to that one.
You can if you can find other people that have done the same thing in the past.
In other places? Yes. Yeah. Look, we have an economic development team within council, and I'm sure that they have been looking at that, and they'll be looking at what happens in other places. Sometimes we've got to go overseas to look, but different demographics again. But thank you, and it is on the agenda now, and I thank you for your question. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 6 o'clock. If there's anybody who's still got burning questions, I'd like you to take up Councillor Hughes' suggestion. Our email addresses, all councillor email addresses, are on the Alpine Shire website. And if you would like specific questions, or we prefer questions, not comments, please get in touch with us. Let's move on to the meeting part of this agenda. The next item, item 8.1.1, is actually the Mayor's report. So it is up to me to present Council's 22-23 annual report. As by way of background, Section 98 of the Local Government Act 2020 requires Council to prepare an annual report for each financial year that contains a report of the operations of the Council, an audited performance statement and audited financial statements. Thank you for coming, those that are leaving. At the time of this publication, Council has not received the audit clearance on the financial statements from the Victorian Auditor General's Office. We are imminently waiting for that to actually arrive. The issues, our report of operations. For those who live and visit, things that occurred during the year, there were 17 pop-ups at community events and markets, which was a new initiative by Council. Council officers and councillors attended those. More than $70,000 was awarded through the Council's community grant program. Item 2, for a thriving economy, the 22-23 event funding program was awarded $132,000 in sponsorships and logistics, and there was a further $102,000 in support of events that were unable to proceed in the previous years. That's something that we have implemented, so that if there's a pot of money being allocated and for whatever reason your event can't go ahead, it gets put through to the following year, so we retain the money. Once upon a time, it just went back into general revenue. Item 3, for the bold protection of our future, solar and battery installations, as Councillor Kelly talked about earlier tonight. We also rolled out the food and organic, the FOGO, on the 1st of July this year. Item 4, for the enjoyment and opportunities of our lifestyle, we are now discussing the land development strategy tonight. It will be going out for public comment on November the 6th, and all comments need to be in by December the 15th. During the year, there was a delivery of $9.3 million in capital projects. Item 5, for the strong and informed leadership. During the year, and it's a great thing that we've seen finally, is the My Alpine online customer portal was delivered. It's allowing a self-service option for customers to log requests with council, and they get a specific number and they are followed through, hopefully. In the governance report, this is a statutory information. Financial statements, there was an operating surplus of 6.3, which was actually nearly 4 million lower than the surplus in the previous year. The annual budget, something else that happened during the year was that the entire 23-24 financial assistance grants were received in late June. Now, the thing about financial assistance grants, they're unencumbered. They are general grants that are offered through from the federal government to local councils to do with as they wish, usually into capital works. On the income side of things, income at a council is made up of rates revenue, grant income, rental on any council properties and fees and charges. The council received 40 million over that period of time, and that was 3.96 favourable to the budget projection, and I would assume that that was because the federal government, federal assistance grants came in before the end of June. On the expenses side of things, for those that really like to delve into the figures, the landfill rehabilitation expense was significantly higher at 2.2 million against a budget of only $78,000. So quite a big difference, and that was due to additional provisions and an increase of the discount factor used in provision calculations. Don't ask me what that actually means, but it's something that council has to take care of. The Department of Treasury and Finance issues those revised discount factors annually. On the performance statement, the performance statement itself provides an overview of council's progress against key performance indicators. Those indicators are actually set under the local government performance reporting framework so that performance can actually be judged across all Victorian councils. There is some further reading in there. So, the recommendations of the Alpine Shire Council Annual Report is that 1, in accordance with Section 100 of the Local Government Act 2020, it receives and notes the 2022-23 Annual Report, and 2, delegates the Chief Executive Officer the authority to correct any errors, including typographical, in the report that do not materially alter the underlying message of the report. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Kelly, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. I think you've given a pretty concise summary of what's a comprehensive report on all things financial year 2023. Probably the area for call out for me is sort of an inward-looking aspect on the organisation. There's some good information in there about the appointment of a new CEO and also the organisational restructure and the focus internally on the organisation. Good coverage on the health and wellbeing interest of the employees. I do have a recommendation that there's some more specific statistics on health and safety performance for employees in the future years. And the other thing I'd reflect on that's in there in terms of the numbers is the average planning decision was 145 days, and that was based on a very limited data set on what was available. And just 3 years prior, it was 68 days. the numbers speak louder than any other aspect, and I know the CEO and the team are really focused on looking to ways to fast track, looking to ways to recruit and retain expertise in this area. The use of contractors, the recruitment of people, and then the lack of retainment of people creates a lot of inertia in business processes. And I think, some of the statistics in there really give evidence to that. So I'm hopeful for a better FY24 on those aspects, and I know the team are very focused on that. But yeah, a really good summary report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Hughes.
This is just a snippet, really. There's some great things listed here, but the hard work that council does do and the good things, I think we need to just reiterate that, it's really easy to dwell on the things that might need improving or that people don't agree upon. But there are some really awesome things that council do in a 12-month period. It actually, at some point throughout the year, I was actually shocked at how much has been achieved. So I applaud staff members involved in doing that, considering the size of our LGA compared to our workforce. So I think just to remember that there are good things that happen too, and the more consultation that we have and things like that, the more our community are going to be aware of these things as well.
Thank you. Councillors, anybody like to make further comment to this annual report? Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think I'll direct it to Ms Havercroft. The FAGS grants, I don't like that word, but anyway, financial assistance grants, were they up or down from the previous year? Normally run around about 2.5–3% from the federal government.
Thank you very much, Councillor Janus.
Do you want that on notice?
So I can't tell you the exact percentage, but as part of our long-term financial planning, we know that over the last 5 years they've increased on average 7%. So some years it's been very high and in other years it's been very low. But that hasn't followed through into our rates cap and other areas that we can increase revenue or produce revenue. So it's a different percentage depending on which bit of income you're looking. But for our federal assistant grants, it's tracked about 7%. But what it was between last year and this year, I couldn't exactly tell you.
Okay, and it's great that they give it to us unencumbered.
Yes.
Because we rely so very heavily on that money, which is our money anyway, because they're our tax money. And I think I'd be right in saying we get about 19.5 million in rates alone. Roughly?
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Yes, I'll go with roughly, approximately that much.
Yep.
Mr Mayor might have them right in front of him, actually, but I'd have to scroll through to find them and they'll appear on the big screen. But it depends whether you include our waste charges or not. So the rates and waste together,
yep,
obviously, are around $20.3, I think, $million.
Yeah, so with all we do a lot with a little, in actual fact, and we do rely very heavily on state and federal grants coming our way. So that's really the point I wanted to make in this. And I think if our ratepayers understood that, particularly with the amount of requests we get, and they are good ideas from members of the public to put projects into our pipeline and, move things along, but we've only got so much, like any basic household, we've only got so much to play with. So, and times are getting tougher. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Any other comments on annual report? No? Councillor Prime? No? Thank you. Councillor Kelly, any final word? No? Thank you. Let's put this to the vote. Those in favour of those two recommendations, please. And that's been carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for that little drop-down box on the screen. I've just noticed that. That's excellent. Moving on to presentation of reports by officers. Director of Assets, Mr Alan Rees, the draft Alpine Shire Land Development Strategy 2023. 2023.
Thank you, Mayor. By way of introduction, this is a long report, so I'll start with a long introduction and then touch on a few particular items of interest. So the draft Alpine Shire Land Development Strategy, or the draft LDS, shows how growth will be accommodated in the Alpine Shire for at least the next 15 years and up to approximately 2041. The draft LDS considers projected population growth and future housing and employment needs. It particularly focuses on the 4 service towns, being Bright, Mount Beauty, Toowoomba South, Myrtleford and Popunka, which will accommodate the majority of the municipality's future growth. It acknowledges the constraints to growth, including bushfire, flood-prone land and infrastructure and servicing needs. It also highlights the key trends that have shifted demand for housing and identifies key actions and objectives to deliver planning outcomes that are respectful of the unique character, landscape and natural landscape of the Alpine Shire. It has been informed by extensive community consultation that has been undertaken between October 2022 and February 2023. In summary, overall, the LDS, or the draft LDS, demonstrates to the Department of Transport and Planning how the Alpine Shire will accommodate future housing and employment land consistent with the community values. It identifies the future role and function of the settlements to guide future decision-making for livable places, and it provides the basis and scope for future structure planning in the 4 service towns to address neighbourhood character, encourage greater housing diversity and accommodate employment activities. This report recommends that Council endorses this draft LDS for community consultation in late 2023, and once this consultation is complete, Council will then be asked to consider any feedback received ahead of adopting a final land development strategy and proceeding with a planning scheme amendment to implement the high-level policies, the settlement hierarchy and the service town framework plans that are included in the draft LDS.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Seconder. Councillor Kelly. Thank you, Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Rees, for your long introduction. I'm going to have a long introduction too, because this is probably the most important piece of work that the Alpine Shire has done in the last very long time, and certainly since I've been on council. And it started well over a year ago with community consultation, and we've had a lot of discussion around what it means to the Alpine Shire and what it means to our communities. And I would urge anybody who's listening and anybody who might report on this to urge our community members to pick it up and have a look at it. It is a document that's about an inch thick if it's all printed, but you can drop in and out online and have a look at the stuff that interests you, because this is really going to shape the future. And Mr. Hoare did ask us a question earlier about employment land, pretty much, and I'll pick up on the process. So the land development strategy is the first step. It's a really high-level document that will start to inform our planning scheme. The next steps are, as again Mr. Rees has said, structure planning of the 4 major townships, and that will pick up the need for employment land, particularly as it won't happen very quickly, so we'll get some of that future and the changes coming in at that point in time. And then the other really second step is the rural land strategy, which will pick up some of the smaller settlements such as Wandillagong, Freeburg, Ovens, and start trying to unravel that complex planning that's been going on there and give us some sort of surety for the people that live there and the people who want to develop. So some of the things in the land development strategy are pretty blunt. They're pretty. It's driven by market, so it's blind, and it's really important that our community gets in and has a good look and gets back to us because of that. But I do want to iterate that it's very high level, and it will adjust as it solidifies into zoning and into structure plans, framework plans, structure plans in the future. So but that doesn't mean you should wait until then to have your say. So there's a executive summary, I believe, so you can dip into that and see if there's something that you really want to go further into. And I just wanted to have a question about the community engagement, because if we do approve it tonight, it goes out for a certain amount of time. We're coming on to Christmas, and it's always hard for people to get feedback in this really busy time of the year. And I just wondered when the engagement's going to be cut off, or is it indeed going to be cut off, Mr Rees?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. So there is a formal engagement period where we will be doing a range of activities. However, as we consolidate that feedback, we anticipate that a final draft will be brought back to Council for consideration sometime in the first half of 2024, and officers will continue to accept and review feedback beyond the formal period, so that we give everyone the opportunity to provide their input.
Thank you very much. And just to follow on from that, so the formal engagement will include pop-ups at markets and some other pop-up street forums, is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. There is actually a separate communications plan that will be rolled out. I can't explain every single element of it, but it will be thoroughly comprehensive. It will involve both an online and an in-person set of opportunities for the community to participate in and provide their feedback.
Thank you.
Sorry, and that will be made public following the events of this evening to inform the community of how that will roll out.
Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. And I think really only adding to what Mayor Nicholas has stated here, there's some really useful numbers and stats in there which sort of sets out how unique our place is. We're a population of 13,500 and we have somewhere, upwards towards 1 million visitors every year, and something like 75% of them stay a night. I do reflect regularly on the fact that I think outside of Byron Bay we've had the most significant increase in property prices, and yet we are a small population and thinly resourced organisation that goes with that. So I make these points because I think, people often say that without a plan, if you don't have a plan, your plan is to fail. And the point of this document is to set us up for success going forwards. And it is big. Everyone will be drawn to the maps that are in there. The maps are visual. You can see what's going on or what's proposed through the strategy. I guess I'd say, get an electronic version, hit Control F, and type in Barwidgee. Type in where you live and see what this document is saying the strategy is for your region, because there are some really specific things in there as well. The strategy is calling out no more subdivision at Smoko, no more subdivision at Ovens. If you think that's a great idea, that's your opportunity to comment. If you think otherwise, this is also the opportunity. So, there's a lot more in there beyond the maps, and section 9.6 actually has the proposed implementation plan. So take a look at that. Certainly, Control F, type in the things that interest you or the areas that interest you to really unpack what's in there about what the strategy is saying for your area. But I do take my hat off. I think these things, they take many years and they have a many years lasting effect for a local government area. So I really endorse this for consultation and feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to clarify for anybody watching, this document is a draft document of a proposal. Mr Rees, can you please just confirm that when we get to the point where we've done all of that, that we then have the actual revised version, if it comes to us, that we then make a decision on to start to implement? Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. That's absolutely correct. What we are proposing this evening is for Council to endorse a draft document that will go to public exhibition and feedback. Once all of that feedback has been received, the draft document will be updated with that input, and then it will be brought back to Council for consideration for adoption as the final document. So there's a two-step process, and only once if council then adopts the final document, that will then be the trigger point for a range of what we call structure planning studies, which will involve CFA, flood studies, various overlays, and explore, what lies ahead, so that that can then inform future decision making.
So those structure plans that would eventuate after this point could turn around and say that this land development strategy is not applicable and it would have to be revised again?
So there are probably two elements to that. So structure plans will inform where and how growth can be accommodated based on a range of constraints. So we know that our area, 92% of our shire is public land. So there's limited area for development and growth. But we are also in the hands of the referral authorities like the CFA, North East Water, who are important contributors to what constraints we need to work with in order to direct where growth may occur or where additional housing may occur. So hopefully that, all that work needs to be done to inform where the opportunities exist. And I think probably to add a little bit more context, based on community feedback and consultation, we've been building approximately 79 or 80 new dwellings for the last 5 to 10 years on average in the Shire. The growth that we need to be thinking about accommodating is about the same. So we're not talking about any change in the general trend of building new dwellings.
Other councillors? No? Councillor Prime.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, just at any point intervene if it's not clear. I think, first of all, just a big thank you to the team. Like this, as Councillor Kelly said before, this has been a massive undertaking. We don't have a very big team. We only have a small population, and the size of this document is quite enormous, and the work that's gone into it as well. And the community engagement was so well done. I think that was earlier this year, the way it was undertaken, and I really appreciate the community for contributing to that. There's not much I can say that's new information compared to what the other councillors said. I think the main thing is to just read it thoroughly. I think some of the critique I get from the community is, well, what about flooding, and what about this, and what about that? And I'm like, yep, have a look. Like, everything gets considered. I think one of the key things, I just had it in my notes here, it's very easy to have a look at these things and worry about where the house is being built and all that. And it says here, the draft LGS is not proposed to rezoning any land that has identified areas for investigation based on promoting growth. So it's really important to read it clearly. We're really lucky to have a bunch of councillors that also live all over the Shire. We're quite well spread out and we know our areas well, but we want feedback from everyone. And like Councillor Kelly said before as well, to control it, have a good look at the area you're interested in, what's proposed, what you like, what you don't like. We want a really good draft exhibition period from this.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Janus. Thanks, Councillor Kelly. Oh, sorry, Councillor Prime. Kelly Prime. Councillor Janus.
Mr Rees, from my understanding, this whole process may take 3 to 4 years to come to a final document back to council. Once time it goes to the minister, comes back again. Would that be about right?
Thank you, Councillor Janus. You're right that there are multiple sort of steps in the journey that lie ahead. It is a long journey, and hence the investment in the quality of the draft document for community consultation or consideration and feedback. So we're now talking about endorsing the draft document. There will then be community consultation. Officers will then bring back, probably in mid next year, a recommendation for a final document. If council adopts the document, that then triggers the planning scheme amendment process, which then will involve engaging with the Department of Transport and Planning and go through that process. So yes, it is a long journey, and The team have done a thorough job so far, and hopefully this has laid the foundation to enable those steps to follow in sequence in a manageable time.
And I, following on from what my fellow councillors have said, it is important that we do receive proper feedback from the community in relation to any issue that they might have or fear that their land is going to be taken over for whatever reason, and they've been farming on it for generations, and they need to, rather than talk about it amongst their friends, which they're more than entitled to do, but contact council and say, these are my concerns or these are our concerns, and we'd like to have that into consideration, because there are areas marked out on that mapping that may include farming lands, etc., and different overlays that are on that map, and that could be constraints. So this is a document for the community to shape how they want to see their community going forward, and I don't believe it to be a document for speculators. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Maybe just to add, to your observations, in the issues section of the report, we talk about rezoning, and just to confirm that, a key concern for the community that has been identified during the initial consultation period was the scale and timeframes for any future rezoning of land. I think it's important to reinforce that the draft LDS does not propose to rezone any land. What it does do is identify areas for investigation based on promotion of growth in areas with higher population forecasts. So the discussion around rezoning is far into the future. This is really about where do we need to investigate to understand the constraints for consideration.
Just one comment I'll make, and that is in part of this, and this answers, I think, some of your question, Mr. Hall, and that is that the structure planning for the service towns, which are Brighton, Mount Beauty, Toowoomba South, Myrtleford and Port Punker, which is emerging in that respect, will be done with the development of the rural land strategy. This could take up to 5 years, but they are going to be done in conjunction with each other as opposed to looked at separately. And I think that that's important from a Shire-wide point of view. All right, so that may answer part of the question you had earlier. Right, Councillor Nicholas, did you have anything final you'd like to say?
I will just add a little bit. Thank you, everyone, because I think it was really good comments on the enormous piece of work that's been achieved, and thanks again to all the people who put into it. We did have expert input into the identification of constraints, which doesn't mean that it's perfect, so having that on the ground information is really valuable. We did get some during the original engagement, and I did want to point out or refer to item 2, which is about receiving and noting the community engagement report, because that is very thorough and does reflect the amount of time and effort that's gone into engagement to build this draft LDS. And so I just want to acknowledge that, and also that the service town approach and the settlement hierarchy reflects the state and regional requirements to work towards building population where we already had services and good transport links and that sort of stuff. So we don't really have an open book to do this, but we do have room to move within what we've already put forward to make it best for the most people into the future. So just picking up Councillor Kelly's comments, to Google you. I mean, was it Control F?
Control F.
I don't do that, but Control F. I do search. Is that Control F? Find your place and look and see what it means to you and get back to us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll put these 4 recommendations to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. That is a unanimous decision. Right. Would somebody like to get a glass of water before we start this one?
From the river pool.
Bright River Pool. 9.1.2. I will hand straight over to Mr. Rees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Forsyth. This report relates to the aquatic risk assessment and safety management of the Bright River Pool. By way of background, the river pool is strategically situated on the Ovens River, directly behind the main thoroughfare of the Bright Township and adjacent to the Bright Splash Park and downstream from the Rotary Water Slide. The site encompasses a spacious riverbank that opens into the river itself. Additional amenities include children's playground and public toilet facilities nearby. The Bright River Pool aquatic area can be accessed from multiple points along the foreshore, featuring a wooden jetty, various platforms and a jumping board. Water depth in the area varies, reaching depths in excess of 4 metres at its deepest. Routine dredging is conducted at the base of the jumping board to maintain an appropriate and safe water depth, thereby mitigating the risk of impact injuries for users. Lifesaving Victoria has been contracted on various occasions to undertake safety and consultancy reviews for both the Bright River Pool and also the neighbouring Popunka River Pool. There's a list there of the various engagements. In September 2023, Lifesaving Victoria was re-engaged by Council in response to the reports that more than 50 rescues were carried out during the 2022-23 season. According to documents provided by Belgravia Leisure, who operate or provide the life-saving services, the Bright River Pool received 12,000 odd visits over a span of 37 days between December and January. And despite staffing hours being limited to between 1 p.m. and 6 p.m, a total of 32 rescues involving 50 individuals were reported. The single-day record for rescues stood at 10, and a significant 46% of the rescues were conducted at the jumping board area, with another 42% taking place in deep water, particularly towards the river's right-hand side. Belgravia responded during the course of the season and in response to the increased visitation and rescue prevalence, and according to their risk assessment, immediately implemented the use of a river rescue board for quick intervention and educational interactions with patrons. However, despite Belgravia Leisure having implemented this additional safety measure, in response to swimmer behaviour, safety incidents continue to occur. Removal of the slide in 2021 has resulted in a reduced number of lifeguard rescues on the northern side where the slide was located, with only 2% of rescues occurring there in the 2022-23 season. There are a number of issues, and as we heard from members of the public this evening, it's a complex matter with many things to consider. Council has identified the jumping board at the Bright River Pool as a notable point of concern for aquatic safety, and data in recent seasons indicates that 46% of all rescues originated from activities associated with this jumping board. Removal of the jumping board will result in a meaningful reduction in the number of high-impact injuries and aquatic emergencies. Removing the jumping board will also offer a multifaceted improvement to aquatic safety. Firstly, its absence is expected to reduce the potential of high-impact injuries and rescues which may occur due to misjudgments in jumping. And secondly, by eliminating this high-risk area, the lifeguard team could then redistribute their focus across the entire pool more efficiently. However, removal of the jumping board is a significant change that may not be universally welcomed by the community, and the aim is to strike a balance between preserving the recreational appeal of the Bright River Pool and ensuring an acceptable level of safety for all users. Removal of the jumping board will change the overall amenity of the Bright River Pool precinct, which has strong historical and cultural significance to the community and visitors. Deep water complicates rescue efforts and increases the risk of swimmer fatigue, both which elevate the likelihood of water-related incidents. These changes aim to minimise high-risk behaviours like diving and make it easier for lifeguards to perform their duties. In terms of a risk assessment undertaken, and also engagement with Lifesaving Victoria. Lifesaving Victoria have recommended the following actions based on the data and risk assessments presented. They recommend the removal of the jumping board based on current risk likelihood and consequence, updating existing signs to reflect any changes in the pool features or safety guidelines, implementing new signs that address previously unhighlighted risks such as swift water conditions if the pool's depth is altered, and using clear and universally understood symbols and languages to ensure that the message is accessible to a broad audience, including international visitors and those who may have literacy challenges, and to continually review and update signage as part of the broader ongoing risk management strategy.
I'd like to propose a recommendation.
A recommendation?
Yep. Well, okay, motion. That's not the one that's up on the board.
Can I... Can we just play this one through first? Would you mind, Councillor Nicholas?
The one that's up there.
Just play this
in the
through
papers.
first. Yeah. Reason I ask to do this is if Councillor Rees, if Director Rees has finished your talk regarding these recommendations, because this is so important, I was going to call upon the CEO, who was going to give some more context to this. Then I will take your recommendation if you wish, Councillor Alexis. Would that be all right?
Not recommendation.
It's a motion when I get to it, but it's...
Well, okay, it'll be, okay, recommendation, fine. So, Mr Rees, would you be fine if... I'll ask the CEO to add some more context.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the opportunity to comment on this. So it's clearly complex and contentious, as we've learnt. A few points from my perspective. So this is a council-operated facility, the River Pool. The reason it's a council-operated facility is because we could put weirboards across, we raise the water level, we put infrastructure in, and we encourage people to come down here. So this is not the same as other locations on the various waterways across the Alpine Shire. It is very different. I have a responsibility on behalf of Council to maintain a safe environment for the public at the facilities that we operate, and that includes the Bright River Pool. So it's my responsibility to maintain that safe workplace, and from my perspective and the perspective of my team, we're not achieving that. And the reason we're not achieving it is because you can see the incident reports that have been provided over the last 2 years are pretty consistent. But also, I'm aware of the feedback through social media of some of the incidents that occur out of hours when we don't have lifeguards there, when we're relying on members of the public to rescue other members of the public. So for me, from my perspective as CEO, we are not providing a safe environment in the Bright River Pool for members of our public. So that's the first point. As well as being a council-operated facility, this is a workplace for me. So I have members of my staff and I have my contractors working at the Bright River Pool. And I have an obligation to provide a safe workplace for my staff and for contractors that I employ. And I'll remind councillors, the first KPI on my list of KPIs, key performance indicators this year, zero harm to my staff. So I've got a situation where I've got staff in a workplace. My staff are being impacted by the jobs that we're asking to do now. It doesn't take a death or a fatality for them to be impacted. Their mental health is being impacted by us asking them to go down and work in that river pool. And what I'll also reflect on, our contractors put largely junior lifeguards with little experience into that river pool, and they're frequently rescuing people from a pretty challenging situation. So I'd say I'm failing in my obligation right now to provide a safe workplace for my staff and for the contractors that I employ. What we've established through our investigation, this is an insured risk. So we've had a lot of conversations about risk and how we're too risk averse. This is an insured risk. So if someone dies in this river pool, feedback through competent insurance professionals is that we've likely done enough for the insurer to be able to insure this risk for council. It would result in an increase in our premium if we had a large event, which resulted in a large payout. But ultimately, we're not talking about an event here which is an uninsured event. But I'd like to say there's a difference between insuring an event and doing as much as you can and as much as is reasonably practicable to reduce the risk of that event happening. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the CEO's perspective, is to reduce through measures that we know are reasonably practical to reduce that risk to a level which is acceptable for people to use that pool. And in doing so, for me to provide a safe workplace for my staff and a safe environment for the public to access.
Mr Mayor?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. I move that recommendation as written on the board. and as a motion. If my fellow councillors want to second that, well and good. If not, I'm not offended.
Seconded. Okay, so we have Councillor Janus and Councillor Kelly. And just to reiterate, the recommendations currently on the board are officers' recommendations being presented to council to adjudicate on. Do I have any opposition to those, to this recommendation? Anybody who would like to talk against these recommendations? Yes, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Right. Okay, let's have some discussion on this and see where we get to. Councillor Janus.
So, sorry, just a point of order before we proceed. My understanding by Councillor Janus's approach is that this motion will be put for a vote, there'll be an outcome, and following that outcome there may or may not be an alternative motion.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor
Janus.
I'm just checking that. Yep, that's there. Point 4. Yes, thank you. Where are we? Look, I've read the report. I know there is a lot of community angst in relation to this matter. My first and foremost thought on this is safety. Safety for the people who use the facility there, and safety for the staff, as the CEO has mentioned. There is already an area there in excess of 4 metres deep. It's not just because it's summer doesn't mean that the water is at summer temperatures. It's a running river and the waters are cold. We have a different demographic visiting our town now, and not all of those visitors are cognisant with being able to swim safely. I've personally been involved in drowning incidents over the years, and it does have a mental effect on all those people involved, whether that be the staff or surrounding people. The experts in this field are, in my view, Life Saving Victoria. This report was no doubt written by one of our officers, I don't know, who would probably have gone through all the risk assessments that council have required them to do, and they have come up with a report noting these matters. I'm unsure the amount of a percentage of space within that swimming pool area that is less than 1 metre deep. So in our normal swimming pools, we have kiddies pools where they can go in there safely and, although under supervision. And this area here seems to go from, it has very little space for smaller people or shorter people to get in, or people who can't swim, and then it goes into a drop-off into a 3 or 3+ metre hole. And that can be quite frightening for somebody who is unable to swim and panic, and they will panic. And the most cause of drowning is panic. So by removing that risk, we're not removing the consequences of somebody passing away through a drowning incident, but we are reducing the risk, and that, to me, is important. So it's fun for kids, young people, to jump off a diving board into the water, splash about, and then the next one and the next one. Some of those protocols of jumping into the pool or into an area aren't always good. They just jump off and they might smack into somebody who was already in there or who was emerging from 3 metres down, and then somebody jumps on top of them, resulting in partial unconsciousness, and then getting themselves into trouble without anybody else around them seeing. So our lifeguards, which has been pointed out, are sometimes inexperienced young people who then have to react to a situation where they may have to carry or lift out or drag out a person who is substantially larger than them, or somebody who is panicking. It creates bedlam for them, and it's a huge ask of them to do. They are better off to be able to scan the area better, as the report says, and look after more people rather than having to concentrate on one particular area. So if we don't dredge, and I'm sure that we do check for logs and debris that have been swept down over the winter time, so that there are no catches in there for on the ankles that might pull somebody down. So we take that risk mitigation, but by having all this deep water, and as I say, further over near the bank, it's up to 4 or plus metres deep already. So if someone wants to do deep diving, they can go over there and do it. But to do that, they must be confident in their swimming ability and able to get out of a situation. So I don't see that it is. So in the report, the first thing I looked at is that in the risk management is a drowning fatality due to lack of swimmer ability, and we know there's a lot of them out there who visit here. The likelihood, very likely, the impact extreme, of course, and the recommendation or the control is to remove the jumping board and cease dredging of the river pool, and do not replace the slide. So, environmental impact, machinery, diesel, well, if they're leaking diesel, they shouldn't be in there anyway, but community and visitor expectations not met. Look, the future implementation of the master plan to create a contemporary high-value community precinct in the area, that's yet to be looked at. We have to look at what is before us now and what the experts have recommended. And the safety of life is paramount before anything. And I'm not trying to be emotional here and all of that. That's the basic principle. Safety first in any situation that we have. So, and I don't want to create a situation where we are I don't like the word, but anyway, nanny state, so to speak, so that anything that might be a little bit dangerous we're going to get rid of. Certainly you're going to, as Mr Anders has quite rightly said, people come down the hill down there at a million mile an hour on their Kmart bike or whatever it might be. And there's risks involved with everything we do in everyday life. But this particular area here, because of the reasons stated by the experts, I think is a very high risk for council, but more importantly than that, it's more of a high risk for vulnerable individuals.
Thanks, Councillor Janus. Councillor Kelly, before I ask you to say anything there, I just wanted to pick up on your point earlier, and that is that the current recommendations have been proposed and seconded. However, if this is voted down, I will be asking for an alternate motion. All right? So, Councillor Kelly, you have 2 minutes.
This is we're at the this is at the pointy end, I guess, of balancing recreational opportunities and enjoyment in our environment, and taking a view to public safety. I've spent a lot of time down there, but this report drew me down there more regularly over the weekend and in recent times. I get it's challenging to strike a balance between public safety and recreational opportunities, and I think I do understand the perspective that's been put forward tonight by particularly the Director and CEO and also Councillor Janice. For me, the risk assessment that's in the report doesn't align with, I guess, with the data available and I guess the years of experience. My sense is that there is an overstatement of the risk from my experience and also from the report I've read. I think that the signage that's there is not ambiguous. There's pictorial diagrams of the types of hazards that are there, including drowning hazard, high water flow hazard. It's quite pictorial. I do acknowledge that perhaps there could be some more inclusive signage to improve that. I think for me, there is a way to navigate that space safely. There is a kids splash park which attracts youngsters. There is some access to the Morses Creek, which is typically of it can be high flow, but certainly not a drowning risk. And drowning risk is actually, I think, the primary issue here. When we look at the data set and we look at the risk we're trying to manage, it reads like drowning. And the drowning risk, only one point of entry is through via the diving board. There's many other opportunities to be exposed to the drowning risk in that waterway. So for mine, I don't believe removal of the diving board will really alter the risk profile. The drowning risk remains. There is signage to support that. Perhaps we need to look at the experience and having a good diversity of experience in the lifeguards. That's certainly what tends to be done at our public beaches. We don't put juniors on by themselves at our public beaches. Perhaps we need to look at that. And that's probably 2 minutes to me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly.
My question went to, was there no consultation with the community with regards
Sorry, who are you?
Carol Price? I submitted the late question.
And I said that we would be discussing through that, and this is part of our discussion. Thank you, Carol. And so no doubt your question will get answered when we get round all of the councillors, which is what's happening in this meeting. Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in the interest of time, I'll keep it short and simple. It is important, but I know that everybody wants to have something to say too. So there's been some points already made in terms of having a quality and a standard and diversity with our lifeguards. Essentially, to put it bluntly, a lifeguard is hired to be a lifeguard to save lives if necessary, and I think it's best that we actually have those in place. But as Councillor Kelly said, having the diversity of more experience to be able to raise that standard could be something that we could look at. There is shallow water at the base of the splash park for those that have young children, so there has got the range of swimming abilities around there. But if you can't drive a car, don't hop in one. And I've kind of come to the concept, if you can't swim, you shouldn't be going in the water. And we can put all of the lifesavers and the signage and things like that in place. But ultimately, at what point do public members need to take some responsibility themselves as well? We have a really amazing point of difference here in Bright that has been around since I was born. I grew up jumping off that diving platform. And yes, incidents happen, but incidents happen all over, and I think it comes down to how you respond to that and what things you put in place in order to reduce that risk. And I think that to date it has been quite a big discussion and a lot of change. So I think there's so many, and there was a point of comparing it to the mountain bike park. This is a council-run facility, so although it is definitely a point of difference, and you can compare the risk factors. At the moment, we are talking about a council-run facility, whereas the mountain bike park isn't. So just to put that into clarification as to why it kind of hasn't been, I suppose, put side by side at this point in time. I also just want to note to the CEO and staff that we do acknowledge everything that you've said. We're not ignoring what it is that you've said in terms of the staff, and if this motion doesn't get put forward and recommended and moved, then I just want, from my point of view, want you to be aware that it's more probably the fact that we want to look at alternatives to what we might be able to do or explore moving forward, as opposed to a very blunt cut-off of a decision being made today.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, previous speakers. I think Katarina's been reading my notes. Point of difference is my first thing. So the Bright River Pool is really special. It would still be a river pool without the board in it. I get that, but it's still, it's been there for a long time, and it's an important part of Bright. I did do a whole Google around Bright River Pool over the week, and it's been, board comes up a lot. Anyway, that's not a reason to keep it. I just flagging that. What we're really talking about is risk management. You can't manage all risks away. So the difference between the risk that we're talking about with the board and just having a river is that we create the risk as an organisation. The board's in place and the dredging happens because we let it happen. So there's a different risk management compared to if the river was left alone and there was just some unknown currents putting deep holes in unknown places. So in some ways we're actually managing the river so we know where the risks are compared to what it would be like if it was a natural flow. And as I just reiterate, you can't manage all the risks away, but you can do as much as you can to manage the risks. And as Mr. Jeremy has said, it is an insured risk. That doesn't mean that it's something that we would take on or continue to take on lightly, because it potentially is loss of life, and that is a horrific thing to have to work on. And I wanted just to pick up a little bit on Councillor Kelly's point about having a range of lifesaver skills there, and pull in my ski patrol experience of over 30 years, and which is exactly what we do. So we don't ever put a new person out doing the whole job without some really solid backup, and that in this situation, or in all life-saving situations, junior people need to have good support. There's also significant training, and I understand that the lifesavers who are being put on this year are undergoing some significant training. So I think that's really important. I guess I've got a question about the risk management that we have put in place, and there's a quote from the agenda item that says all actions to manage the risk have been unsuccessful. And my question is, have we put in place all reasonable measures to manage the risk, or are there more things that we could do?
Would you like an answer to that now?
Well, if there's an answer...
I was going to call on, just before CEO Mr Jeremy does answer that question, just to answer your question, and that is that seems to be the burning question amongst the public at the moment about community consultation. So I will call on the CEO now to reply to that, and also to reply to Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So perhaps Councillor Nicholas's question first. So, Councillor Nicholas, we have deferred to the expertise of Lifesaving Victoria to advise us. We are not experts individually in running river pools. I will note that as far as the feedback from Lifesaving Victoria goes, this is the only situation in Australia where this circumstance exists, where a local government authority is putting weir boards in, artificially raising the river height and putting infrastructure in and encouraging people into the river. So it's quite challenging, I believe, for Lifesaving Victoria, as it has been for us, to assess objectively how those risks weigh up. So I think that's an important one to note. But have we done everything? We've done everything that has been advised to us by Lifesaving Victoria. Yeah, we're happy. We're open to other suggestions from councillors or for other bodies, but that's who we've gone to for expertise. So that's the question. And then, Carol, thanks very much for your question. So these are ultimately the CEO's recommendations. That's me. These are not. There has been no council decision, and these are my recommendations to council based on the assessment of my team. And I have determined the extent of community engagement to carry out. And the reason there's been no community engagement in advance of this recommendation to council is because that community engagement cannot change my decision based on the assessment that my team have done. So according to our community engagement policy, if there is no opportunity for community engagement to change the decision or the recommendation, then community engagement is unnecessary. So I am relying in this regard on my 7 elected councillors here to represent the views of the public. I know that each of the councillors had quite a lot of engagement. We've been discussing this topic with councillors for a number of months now to give them the opportunity to get up to speed. So I'm relying tonight on councillors making a decision which is in the best interest of the public. That might not necessarily align with my recommendations, but ultimately my role, frank and fearless, is to put forward a recommendation, not one which I expect to be popular, but one which I have confidence that we've done the work into back. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, look, we'll get rid of some conventions. You can ask. Yes, you can.
I know that you've got all legalities that you have to answer to. I understand that. But at the end of the day, I was thinking of you, Ron, and I don't know you, I've never met you, but you think about what kids have to do nowadays, how they have to live. They all got through all the COVID and all the rest of it. They wake up in the morning and Israel's bombarding Hamas and all the rest of it, and they've got a little pool down there. They had the steel one, it's gone. There was a tree I used to sometimes sit under to watch them. That's gone, maybe of necessity. The other little green thing, they watch that and they say, your turn, little boy, your turn, little girl, so they don't smash on each other's head, as was described before. It can be done. I believe it can be done. And I think it's an essential that we keep it, and we will try to work in with you, because I understand you've got litigation, everything that you have to consider. But we will try to work in with you, and we would appreciate you just stalling it for a little while so the other interested parties here can try to come up with some solutions, because we know it's not an easy thing. But we were all in shock. My young grandchild came in to me, guess what? Guess what? They're taking down the... But I go, no, you're joking.
Thanks,
I was shocked. So can we stall it, not make a big decision here, and we help you?
Let's get down to councillor deliberation, but thank you for your input.
No
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to speak to or against? Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
I don't want to speak to or against it. I do want to point out something that CEO did mention then just briefly about it's the only river system in Australia where this actually happens, and in Victoria. I wonder how we get that actual ability to alter a river course, but that's a different question. But it should be answered. The second one is that Lifesaving Victoria in the report, from what I can remember, and please correct me if I'm wrong in what I'm about to say, is that the Bright River Pool had more rescues than any other site in Victoria in the last 12 months. That's every beach that has a lifesaving. Not by a little way, by a long shot, is from my memory from looking at the data. So I just wanted to note that, because that's a really interesting statistic that I don't think we've discussed. Cool.
Thank you. Any councillor? Yes. Thank you, councillor Prime.
Oh yes. Sorry.
Yeah. And speak up too, please, councillor Prime.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Apologies, everyone. I'm actually just staring at a black screen, so I can't see anyone there. Look, I think everyone's covered the major topics. I'd sort of like to go back to question time. I think it was the Mayor who said we're the community representatives, and I do honestly feel like we've always got our finger on the pulse, and we do have a pretty good idea of community sentiment as well. So I think coming into tonight, we knew exactly what people's thoughts were, whether we'd been approached or not, or we'd happened to chance across some comments on social media. And I think for me, there's two issues on this one which have been picked up. One is the liability, and we've discussed that, we're probably covered as best as we can from that, and we've implemented as many things as we've been recommended to implement, and it hasn't seemed to have made a dent. And the other thing is the safety aside from that. So even if we are covered from every angle, are we comfortable? And I've tried to think of every possible thing that you can compare this pool to, and it's, as has already been discussed, it's not like anything else. The beach isn't man-made. They put lifesavers there, but the beach exists otherwise. It's not like the mountain bike park. It's not like anything else, and it's council run. So it's really hard to actually compare it to something and give you, like we've said, when Lifesaving Victoria prepared their report, they've got really nothing else to go on. They've had to take this as it is. So they're sort of the main two issues from that. I really appreciate the community concern, and there's a lot of sentimentality behind this as well, and I completely understand that. And I think I'd speak on behalf of all councillors in saying we've had a big think about this and lots of discussion around this, and I think every point has been talked over. So, and I really appreciate the community interest as well.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Any other councillors? I think everyone's had a say. Back to you, Councillor Janice. 2 minutes for a wrap-up.
Time's ticking.
There we go.
I hope that doesn't come off my time. Look, thank you, councillors. Look, I fully respect everything that everybody has said here, including members of the public. Thank you for that. As somebody said, once upon a time we used to look after the kids and we used to look after everybody else's kids, and I think some of those times are over because as somebody said, there's lifeguards there. That's their job. We're going to maybe slip up the road to that little place up there and have a couple of bevies, and the kids will be fine. There is risk involved, and there's risk involved in everything that we do. And you jumped off ropes, I jumped off ropes into creeks that I probably shouldn't have done. But now we're in 2023. There's a different thing. We have a different demographic coming to our township to the township of Bright and surrounds, and the rivers around us, and there have been river drownings in the Alpine Shire in the last few years. And this is it is a controlled venue, but it has got that element of risk in there that I don't necessarily believe needs to be there. There is plenty of deep water for people to swim in, and I think there is inherent risk in having that deep drop off from a shallow ledge down into a deep hole, and people actually panicking and getting themselves into trouble. I don't believe it to be necessary, and I think that's my 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Well timed. Before I put this to the vote, I will just remind councillors there's 8 recommendations up there. If this is voted down, I will be asking for an alternate recommendation tonight. So could I have a show of hands, those in favour of the recommendations as they are shown? Those against?
Call for a division.
Thank you. I'll call for a division. Those in favour? Councillors Janus and Councillors Keeble. Those against? Councillors Kelly, Councillors Nicholas, Councillor Forsyth, Councillor Hughes and Councillor Prime. That motion has been defeated. I will now call any councillor if there is alternative. Councillor Hughes, do you have an alternative recommendation to put to council?
I do, please, if I could. I would like to put forward 5. That's a kind of a variation of what is happening up there already. Number one is noting the implementation of all risk management recommendations from 2021 Lifesaving Victoria at the Bright River Pool. Number two is noting that the safety incident statistics over the 22-23 summer season. Number three is gather, monitor and assess safety and incident statistics in the area around the jumping board and dredged riverbed over the next 23-24 summer to inform a council decision after the conclusion of the summer season. Number four, nominates a master planning project to be added to the project pipeline for Howitt and Centenary Parks that would create a contemporary high-value community precinct. And number five, considers replacement of the slide as an option through that master planning process.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kelly. Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we've spoken to this already, but there was the original recommendation and there were parts of that recommendation that we note and acknowledge, and that is we either do or we don't. But based on the information that has been discussed, I think an alternative that has been put forward is allowing further consultation, discussion, feedback, all of those types of things, being that it is such a quick thing that has come to the public, and ultimately we are here as a public representative, and as I've said, we note all of the things that council staff do deal with, and we do acknowledge that there is that sentiment behind it all, but as a community representative I am speaking on behalf of my community, and so far it has been in favour of continuing with having the diving platform still in place. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
I'd probably just highlight motion 5 there in terms of the master planning opportunity. I think this whole precinct is starting to create challenges, whether it's in terms of conservation values. Some of the assets are becoming quite aged. You know, it is heading towards time for a refresh there. Although I like to think the splash park has longevity personally. But you know, I think this particular issue, we've got a motion there that addresses some further work on it. But also, yeah, look, I think that whole precinct is ripe for a next version 2.0. Thank you.
Other councillors? Councillor Janus.
Thank you. That's fine, and I still think that the important thing here is the risk. So what we are going to ostensibly do is leave that risk there for another year so we can gather some more statistics, and hopefully those statistics won't have some bad results. Basically, I'm not wishing anything bad on anybody, but to me the risk continues to be there. We've already had statistics given to us, although some people might not believe them or understand them. Nevertheless, it is there, and it says here in the risk management, drowning fatality due to lack of swimmer ability, very likely, impact extreme.
Thank you. Any other councillors?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor
I'm
Nicholas.
sorry, I'm sort of doing this on the run because I've just seen what I think is a gap in this motion, and I'd like to suggest an amendment that we add another point about continuing to seek ways to further mitigate the risk during this summer.
Yep.
And if I think both.
Yes.
Yep. Do you know how to run it? That council continues to seek ways to mitigate the risk of the diving platform and dredging, or risk from.
So it would be a sixth item?
Yep. Keep going anyway. Over this summer or whatever
Do you have some words to this?
Beautiful. Yep.
Councillor Kelly, Councillor Hughes, would you be happy with this addition?
Sorry, could I just make a clarification? So the amendment, if it's to be carried to form part of this recommendation, needs to be moved and seconded and voted on, and then you go back to the amendment.
Back to the amended,
and then continue
so
as
it can
if
be
that's...
moved by anyone.
All right.
So moved by me.
This one is actually the amendment will be moved by Councillor Nicholas. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Right. So let's have a quick vote.
Can we just read it out, please?
Council continues to seek ways to mitigate the risk from the diving platform and dredging over the 23-24 summer season.
Thanks.
Any other comments from councillors regarding the wording on this?
Seek and implement.
Are we talking drowning risk?
We're just talking continue to seek ways to mitigate risk. The risk or risk?
Risks. Could be getting jumped on. It could be
because to me, I think that we're dealing with drowning risk, and that's my view. That
it should be just one thing.
Okay, risk.
Risk overall.
I think it's risk because that brings into consideration.
Could be cobbling off sideways. Could be hitting your head on
the
it.
diving board.
Yeah.
The risks. I think is okay.
I'm sorry to jump in again, but if we continue to change it, we should really allow this one to go to the vote.
I realise that. We're actually
amendment.
discussing this particular wording at the moment. Is that
Sorry.
It has been moved and seconded.
But it's already been moved and seconded, so it's at the point of discussion.
Right, my apologies. The risk was in there before. You leave that in there then. Okay.
The risk is plural.
So can we discuss this amendment first?
Yep, so we'll discuss this amendment and invite you to take it to the vote, and if it's carried, it then forms part of, it becomes number 6 of the alternative motion.
Fine.
If it doesn't carry, then you go back to 1 to 5.
Right, so we are discussing now potential item 6. Any discussion people would like to make on that? No? Okay, then I'm going to put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour of that particular amendment and the wording thereof, would you raise your hands, please? Right. Those against? Okay. We have people abstaining. Sorry, motion is not carried. Now we can have an alternative. I'll ask for an alternative amendment.
All right,
who would like to?
I can make an attempt and I'll.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly, you have an alternative amendment.
Council continues to seek ways to mitigate the risk of drowning in the river pool this summer season, 2023-24.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly. Can I have a seconder first for this?
Sorry.
Nope.
Seconder.
Seconder, thank you. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Prime.
Sorry, just because I can't see what's going on, can someone just tell me what point of the alternative motion and just reread it for me, please?
Certainly. At the moment, we have had one amendment which has not got up simply because I believe the wording of that amendment. So now we have a second amendment which would actually be item 6 of the alternate motion if it gets carried. And the wording of that is that Council continues to seek ways to mitigate the risk of drowning in the river pool this 23-24 summer season.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. We have Councillor Kelly, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Kelly, any further comment regarding your wording? Councillor Keeble? No. Those in favour of that particular amendment, would you please raise your hands? Thank you. Those against? It was not carried unanimously. Thank you, but it was carried.
Division.
Division. Those in favour? Councillors Kelly, Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Prime, Councillor Forsyth, Councillor Keeble and Councillor Hughes. Those against? Councillor Janus.
I don't even get to speak to it, Mr Mayor.
I asked the people to speak to that wording.
Yeah.
That amendment now becomes item 6 of the above recommendation, and then we are going back to discussion on that.
So if somebody doesn't drown, then it's successful. Comment?
Right, we now have recommendations of an alternative motion, which goes now back to Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Councillor Hughes, would you like to make any more comments?
Challenge accepted. I just think, just to the point that Councillor Janus just made, it's not saying it's mitigating the risk of drowning. That's just in addition to what we're doing above. So we're going to continue to monitor and assess, and we're going to seek ways to mitigate the risk of drowning in that river pool. Doesn't mean someone has to drown in order for that to happen. It's just we're mitigating the risks of that occurring. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Nothing further.
Councillor Janus, would you like to make some comments?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Keeble.
I'll ask a question of the CEO, if I may, Mayor Forsyth. So the number 6 one there, which is mitigate. Can you read it out, please? I can't read it.
Council continues to seek ways to mitigate the risk of drowning in the river pool this 23-24 summer season.
Thank you. Given that number 6, CEO Will Jeremy, what mitigations might you put in place to further lower the risk that we haven't already done?
Thanks, Councillor Keeble. I'm not aware of them, but we will endeavour to seek them as requested.
Thank you.
I think one of the interesting things that has come out of this whole discussion, and then I'll ask for other councillors if they wish to add to this, is public awareness. The issue at the river pool, I don't believe the public were aware of the number of incidents that had occurred there. I don't think it's been public knowledge in the past. So I think bringing it to light and monitoring it over the next this summer season, I just think that public will become more aware of what the potential risks are and if there is an inherent risk there, and also if what the council is actually doing by putting in the weir boards and dredging the place and having the jumping thing there, if it is an unacceptable risk, then it'll be considered by council sometime in the middle of next year in the winter time when people aren't down there. But at least there's public awareness about this now, and it really is a case of educate and engage. Any other councillors like to make comments on these recommendations? No. In that case, I will put those the alternate recommendations to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. And we'll call a division. Those in favour? Councillors Kelly, Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Prime, Councillor Forsyth, Councillor Keeble, Councillor Hughes. Those against? Councillor Janus. Thank you. Moving on. (9.1.3) Community Climate Action Plan Roadmap, introduction and recommendations. Thank you. I think Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mayor Forsyth. The Community Climate Action Plan Roadmap 2023 provides a roadmap for the development of a future Community Climate Action Plan. It is not an action plan in itself. The roadmap will assist in developing a clear pathway to prepare a Community Climate Action Plan and will support and empower the local community to reduce its emissions and adapt to a changing climate. By way of background, in November 2021, Council declared a climate emergency and noted the resource and cost implications of developing a community climate action plan. The roadmap develops strategic climate response goals and identifies opportunity areas that reflect the community and other stakeholders' understanding and priorities. Council's ability to prioritise and support impactful community climate action initiatives stems from the development of a detailed and locally accurate community emissions profile and ongoing broader community engagement and education. In terms of issues, the declaration of the climate emergency in November 2021 enabled Council to work within its legislative, financial and leadership capacity to facilitate and activate climate change mitigation strategies across the municipality. Through Council's Climate Action Plan, Council committed to a net zero greenhouse gas emissions target from corporate operations by 2023. Council has significantly reduced its greenhouse gas emissions since the baseline year and has committed to offsetting residual greenhouse gas emissions from 2022-23 financial year. Council has control over its own emissions and the steps taken to mitigate and offset those emissions. However, Council can advocate to others in the Alpine Shire, but does not have direct control over the emissions of residents, businesses, industry and visitors. Certain emissions and abatement options may be particularly difficult and time-consuming to accurately measure and track. In terms of financial resource implications, the development of the Community Climate Action Plan roadmap was funded by the Australian and Victorian governments under the Commonwealth State Disaster Recovery Funding Agreement, and the development of a detailed assessment of the community greenhouse gas emissions profile is estimated to cost approximately $35,000 and has been budgeted for delivery in the current financial year. Ongoing community education and engagement on climate action can be resourced from within Council's existing sustainability and communications and engagement teams. In terms of risk management, the key risks identified in relation to the Community Climate Action Plan and mitigation actions are outlined in the table, and probably in particular the reputation to Council in terms of Council's climate emergency declaration may appear to be meaningless and tokenistic if this recommendation put forward for consideration this evening is not adopted and passed by Council.
So moved.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Second.
Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble.
2021 November was noted in regards to the declaration. We're here in 2023. We're moving along. Some may say not quick enough. Some may say too fast. But we are here in a good space. So just noted, and thanks for the report, Dr. Rees. Great.
Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Yep, absolutely. For me, sometimes it feels like it's far too slow, but absolutely we are kicking goals, and we're achieving really well with the VECO fully renewable power agreement that we have. We now have 3 EVs in the fleet. We're looking into transforming all our tools into electric tools. We're reducing waste to landfill through FOGO, and we're working with and into the community. And the Trek example that was used earlier today for congratulations is one of the examples. But there's plenty of other things happening in communities through Landcare and the sustainable group in both the Upper Ovens and the Myrtleford area. We also work with Goulburn Murray Climate Alliance, so we have a strong capacity across the region to make some really significant change. And I commend both this roadmap and the work that went into it and my expectation of what we do into the future.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. I think Alpine Shire Council has been a leader, given its size, in focusing internally and reducing our emissions footprint and recognising the very real impact of climate change from the concentration of CO2. I have some difficulty in what the objective of this community climate action plan is. I think organisations need to take accountability. I think the federal government needs to take accountability. This document, I guess, has some objective of education for members of our shire and where our missions lie within our community. And to that end, I think probably the only beneficial use is if community groups get on board with it.
Sure.
So to that end, I have some difficulty in this being an Alpine Shire document. I think it really needs to be the community and specific community organisations that have a passion and are dedicated to this area. So, to that end, I would ask everyone to have a good look at. There are some well-defined areas for opportunities, and really it's up to individuals and to organisations that are red hot on this issue to take forth. It's not up to the Alpine Shire Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Janice.
Thank you. As I've noted previously at council meetings, we, as a community, as a nation, we're heading toward electrification, and that's part of the greenhouse gas emissions reduction. We, as an organisation, have to lead from the front to reduce those emissions, and we are also in probably a better position than some to advocate to state and federal government for funds and programs to assist businesses and households, and particularly households on low budget incomes, and also low budget and also renters. So it's going to help their bottom line financially, but it will also help the environment. So we as council are in a position, because we meet with ministers and heads of government, and as Councillor said, we are ahead of the pack basically as a small council. And at a recent conference, I told them where we're at. They're still 5-10 years out and trying to reach net zero for their council, and they got much more money than we have. They get more money in parking fines in our budget.
Mm. Less distance to drive. So.
And less distance to drive.
Thank you, Councillor Janice. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You kind of stole my thoughts, but the point here is that, we do want to lead by example for our community, and we want to be teachers in these processes as well. I think we have a wide range of access to information as it comes through and as things change and as things grow. So I feel like, we can show what it is that we're capable of to lead the way, then I think all for the better.
Anybody else? Back to you. All good. All good. Councillor Prime, anything? No. Okay, let's put those recommendations to the vote. Those in favour of those recommendations, please. Thank you. That is unanimous. 9.1.4, and Councillor Keeble has called a conflict of interest. Councillor Keeble is leaving at 7:35. Dinner plane, snowmaking factory and snow guns. Thank you, Mr Rees.
Thank you, Mayor Forsyth. This report relates to the award of a contract for the supply and commissioning of a snowmaking factory and snow guns at the Pea Shooter Toboggan Slope at Dinner Plain. By way of background, this project is fully funded by the state government through the Regional Infrastructure Fund to assist the growth of rural Victoria by providing grants for infrastructure projects. The project will provide upgraded and improved snowmaking infrastructure to provide a reliable snow season from mid-June to late September each year at Dinner Plain, resulting in economic and social benefits for the Dinner Plain community and businesses. The contract scope includes manufacturing, supplying, installing and commissioning 2 snow guns and a snowmaking factory at the Pea Shooter Toboggan Slope at Dinner Plain. In terms of the procurement process, prior to progressing with it, the team conducted extensive engagement with the snowmaking teams from Vale Resorts at Mount Hotham and Mount Buller Resorts to ensure that the appropriate specifications and performance criteria were identified in the tender documentation. Public tender was posted on the 2nd of August 2023 on tenders.net in accordance with Council's procurement policy, and following the assessment of these tenders, it was determined that the tender from Techno Alpin best met the selection criteria. In terms of issues facing this particular recommendation, there is a possibility of time delay caused by shipping or customs as a risk to the snowmaking equipment being commissioned by June 2024 for the start of the snow season. The preferred tenderer has confirmed that they are able to meet this requirement in their project plan and have included an additional 1 month's time contingency for this particular risk. The ongoing operating model is being developed and will be subject to Council's expression of interest process that will enable the appointment of a suitably qualified operator. The maintenance requirements of the snow factory and snow guns will be included in the annual budget process for the 2024-25 financial year onwards, and these costs are estimated in the range of $160,000 to $340,000 depending on the final ongoing operating model. The available budget for the Dinner Plain snowmaking project is $3 million, and this project is fully funded as previously stated. There are sufficient funds within the project budget to award this contract for the manufacture, supply and commissioning of the snow factory and the snow guns. As mentioned earlier, in terms of consultation, there's been extensive engagement with Vale Resorts at Mount Hotham and also the Mount Buller Resort team to ensure we understood the correct specifications, and the Dinner Plain community has had extensive involvement and engagement for this project, including an online survey, design workshops and public consultation. In conclusion, following the tender evaluation assessment and site visits, the tender from Techno Alpin is considered the best value for Council due to their price, experience and knowledge of the snowmaking equipment, and it is recommended that the contract be awarded to Techno Alpin as per the recommendations.
Can I have a mover? Councillor Kelly. Seconder, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Director Rees. I think in the report there's evidence of some good due diligence by the team here in terms of the procurement opportunity and getting input from those who are most familiar with this kit. I'm sure that Alpine Shire is not so familiar. In that regard, I guess I accept there's a real capital investment opportunity here that shouldn't be left on the table. It could add a lot of value to the Dinner Plain offering. There's a couple of areas I've got some questions or concerns about that I wouldn't mind just having a couple of questions on. The first one is around the operational costs, and there's a significant range in there, and that makes sense to me. I think the operation and maintenance of this equipment is not going to be a simple thing. What are some of the underlying, or what are the sort of one or two key drivers that drive that broad range from 160 to 340? If you could, what are the two main drivers there?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So there are probably three drivers to consider. The first one is whether or not there's an opportunity to derive some revenue from the tobogganing activities, and that revenue will obviously offset operating costs. So hence the sort of lower end of the cost spectrum. On the expense side, there are two main drivers of the expenses. One is the option for a managed slope, so having staff managing the activities of users. So those would be, trained staff sort of managing the number of people on the slope, and then the accessibility and traffic managing the situation. And the second major driver of cost is the ongoing maintenance. So this equipment does need to be maintained. It has approximately a 10 to 20 year lifespan, depending on the hours that it is run. So those are the three main drivers of the business model.
Thank you. And look, just secondly, in the report there is a risk highlighted that, if the procurement task isn't sort of executed promptly, there's a risk of not having this kit for the 2024 ski or snow season. Does that mean that the site configuration and putting aside who actually does it, but the actual site configuration and implementation of the equipment is resolved, or is there also a risk that even if the kit arrives in a timely fashion, or the equipment, there is still a challenge to actually, setting it up and configuring it to an operating state for the winter season?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. There are probably two components in response to that question. The first, assuming, relates to the in-ground infrastructure, so the pipework, valves, etc., to get the water to the pea shooter or to the slope. So that particular scope has been designed, and it's subject to a tender document that's currently being progressed and will be coming before Council as a recommendation for award for those works. So that gets the water to the site. And secondly, Techno Alpine are the preferred supplier of snow equipment, particularly snow guns and snow factories in the Australian alpine industry. And they have technicians that will be on board for the commissioning, the setup, and then the presence on site for a number of months afterwards to ensure that it is operating efficiently.
I imagine the commissioning will be a great ribbon-cutting opportunity for someone. It was described to me as a giant slushy machine by someone else. Look, I'll close it out there. I guess my only recommendation is that we also look to your point earlier, to use local expertise on how we set this thing up to be safe and profitable, or financially viable, I should say. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you. I'm going to be really honest about this. I struggle with the concept of a snowmaking machine of this calibre for a tiny little beginner's run and a toboggan run. However, picking up on the opportunities for Dinner Plain because of it, and the amount of community support there was at Dinner Plain, and that it's not costing Alpine Shire anything to put it in, that we've fully funded, and we're on 100% renewable generated electricity, I think we can do it. And I do think that it will, in some ways, it will help teach people a bit more about what we have to do to keep what we had in terms of the climate changing. So because we can isn't the only reason that we're doing it. What I'm trying to say, and that I think Dinner Plain is a fabulous place to do tobogganing. By the way, I think it's and that the other opportunities for tobogganing and for beginner skiing are pretty slim at Hotham in the area. So it's got great potential to really build Dinner Plain as a destination, which we need to do to keep that economic base going. That's me.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Rees, can you please confirm that if we don't procure this soon, we lose funding for that? Because we wouldn't meet the deadline. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. This is not so much linked to the funding being at risk. It's more around the critical path of the project to be able to have the equipment installed and available and commissioned for the start of the next season. Of course, if there are delays, it will put the funding at risk, but given the significant progress on the project to date, we would need to explore those options with the funding agency if that was to occur in due course.
Thank you. And if we were to say, it all got put in place and we run it for, how long do we have, being that it's a grant-funded project or a piece of equipment, how long do we have to actually have it and be using it in order for that to kind of meet the requirements of the grant funding?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. In the grant agreement, there is an obligation on Council to operate the asset for 5 years to meet our obligations.
So if after the 5 years we see that the financial model doesn't fit or align with Alpine Shire Council's ongoing budgets and things, we have an opportunity to on-sell the piece of equipment?
So there is a healthy market for this sort of equipment, both new and second-hand. We know that other resorts are in the market as well, so we would explore those options at that time. I think the important thing is to make sure we invest in the maintenance of the equipment throughout its life to keep it in the best possible condition for all eventualities.
And one more question, sorry, just to satisfy those listening. The machine itself could hypothetically be used off-mountain to create winter wonderlands?
Ice skating.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Yes, I guess the configuration is a 40-foot container on a trailer, so it is mobile, and they are mobile on other resorts where they are redeployed depending on the requirements of where snow's needed to be made. So it is a mobile unit.
Satisfy you. Councillor Janus.
Mr. Rees, basically it's there to keep the season open a little bit longer either side of the official season, I suppose, and dinner plane being a little bit lower, loses its snow earlier, gets it later. So I can see the benefit there. As it's going to be located near a education facility, have we looked at the noise factor on that? Does it emit lots of noise? I know snow guns make a bit of noise, but this machine or the combination thereof?
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Yes, snow guns are noisy. The design team have assessed the compliance of these snow guns with the noise standards, and they do fall within the EPA recommended noise thresholds. So you will hear them, but they fall within the EPA thresholds.
Not as loud as a two-stroke motorbike sort of thing? No. Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, no.
Councillor Prime, did you have any questions?
Look, I think everyone's cleared up a lot of things. I think someone touched on the community support. From memory, it was quite large for this. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, about 70% or more were in favour of this. I could be fibbing. Sounds right?
Yes.
Thank you. That's it. No, I sort of had similar concerns as Councillor Nicholas, but I do think state government funded, great addition to a small community like Dinner Plain, and hopefully no hiccups along the way, and get ready for a 2024 season.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly, any final word?
One last question, if I may, Mayor. Does the council need a planning or building permit to trench and install this equipment?
Councillor Kelly, I couldn't answer that on the spot. However, I can assure you that Council is subject to all the same permissions as anyone else in the community or wanting to do any works, and so we will be complying with those requirements.
Fine. Okay, let's put those recommendations to the vote. Those in favour, please, show of hands. Thank you. That is unanimous. And Mr. Rees, could you... thanks, Mr. Hall. Thank you. Councillor. Councillor Keeble will... Yes. Oh, yeah. You've changed. Councillor Keeble is returning to the chamber at 7:51. Moving on to 9.2, the Director of Customer and Community, Ms Helen Havercroft. Item 9.2.1, Child Safety Policy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm conscious that it's been a long session this evening, so I shall keep it brief, and I can answer questions through that part of the meeting if that helps. So, this evening, this report relates to child safety legislation and the requirements on council to have an updated and effective child safe standards from the 1st of January 2023. We haven't had that. We have had a child safe policy, but it hasn't been reflective of the introduction of 11 standards as opposed to the 7 standards that existed beforehand. The policy is very operational in its delivery, so it's setting out the instructions of how the Chief Executive will operate child safety standards within Council. And it doesn't yet have all of the details relating to the action plan. A little bit like the Reconciliation Action Plan when we came to that, we had a policy that set out the high level around it and then an action plan that set out the details of how we would operationally deliver it. So that action plan continues to be worked up and will sit alongside the delivery of the policy when we get to it. So this evening, the recommendation is that Council endorses the revised child safe policy for the purposes of placing it on public exhibition, with submissions closing on the 21st of November, and reviews and considers submissions to the revised child safe policy and presents the final version to a later ordinary council meeting.
So moved.
Councillor Janus and Councillor Hughes. Councillor Janus?
No, I think it's going to go out. Going to go out for public submission, and ask, once again with all these things, ask the public to at least have a look at it and get back to us. It is important, and as we know, in society at the moment we're hearing more and more issues about what has happened to young people in the past. We're trying to eliminate all that going forward, and by having a document that we can refer to and refer others to will assist the staff in that way. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Just one of those, it's one of those things that we all should have. I think it just allows even more of a tool to use if there's ever anything, you've got this to back you up as to why things can be questioned and used. And I think it's an important piece of policy, but it's a must-have. So,
thank you. Any other councillors' comments? Councillor Keeble.
The same issue as you, Councillor Janus. I will say that the child safety policy. The change from the 7 standards to the 11 standards. You might think that the 7 standards might be incorporated somehow into the new 11 standards, but they're not. They're completely different. One of the standards, especially the first 1 and 2, look at our Indigenous youth. And I urge, I know we're talking about make sure people out there have a say. We know we have Indigenous youth in our community, and hopefully they will also engage in the process. But the 11 standards are a change from the last 7. They're a good change, and I look forward to the documentation sometime in December, whenever it comes. Thanks.
Thank you. No. Councillor Prime, any questions? No. Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to pick up the consultation point. So whilst there's a public exhibition period in here, and we will take those submissions, the maternal child health team are also helping to do much more active engagement with the families that would be impacted by this through the development of the action plan, because that feels much more relevant. One of the standards is that they have a say in how we would action their safety. But rather than doing it through the policy, which is quite a bland, these are the statements and standards, we're doing it through the action planning process to ensure that they have a real say in what it looks and feels like.
Thank you. Right, let's put this one to the vote, those 2 recommendations. Those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. 9.2.2, Instruments of Appointment and Authorisation, Planning and Environment Act. Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I suppose it's with exciting news that I set out before you a report that says that we have a new planning officer, and this is the legal paperwork to ensure that they have the appropriate delegations to be able to approve or otherwise planning applications under the delegation.
Thank you. Councillor Janus, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Janus.
No, administrative, and thank you for getting another planning officer.
Councillor Keeble.
Here.
Any other comments? Here.
Just a question.
Certainly.
Is it a full-time planning officer or part-time?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. It's a part-time planning officer of name that you may all have heard of before. They're a former employee of council who's returned into our fold for a short period of time. So actually they're on our staff permanently, but we know that they're only staying for a little bit of time. But their experience as a planner was too good to let up, so we invited them back.
Thank you. No other councillors? No? Okay. Please put this one to the vote. Those in favour, raise hands. Again, unanimous. 9.2.3, Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes. Ms Havercroft.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This is a report to share with councillors the unconfirmed Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes from the 15th of September 2023. The only substantive matter that was discussed during that meeting was the draft financial statements, which you have endorsed this evening through the approval of the annual report, which was a Mayor's report earlier this evening. At that time, we didn't have the auditors or Vargo's closing report. We now have the auditor's closing report and confirmation from Vargo that we can confirm our annual accounts. We just don't have the certificates as was described earlier. So the recommendation this evening is that Council receives and notes the unconfirmed minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting on the 15th of September 2023.
Mover, seconder. Councillor Janus again. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Janus.
No comments.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Any councillors got comments? No. Thank you. To the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Item 10, informal meetings of councillors. The recommendation is that summary of informal meetings of councillors for the September-October 23 be received. Mover.
So moved.
Councillor Keeble and Councillor Hughes. Any further comments?
None for me.
No. Thank you. To the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. Item 11, presentation of reports by delegates. Do any councillors have reports tonight? Thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
I would like to make a brief report about attending the Goulburn-Murray Climate Alliance executive meeting. And just for anybody who might still be listening, it's a two-tiered group. The Goulburn-Murray Climate Alliance is the executive that runs the rest of the group, if you like, and manages the executive officer. And then there's a general group that's made up of the local government's catchment management authority and resort board representatives from across the region, from Shepparton right through to Yea. So a pretty significant group of people, and we can really start to achieve some things that you can't achieve as a one little local government. And pick up Councillor Kelly's points earlier about Alpine Shire being a leader. We're certainly a leader in that space, particularly for a smaller government area. So there's an annual report about to be released. The executive committee also drives the strategic planning, and that I hope will be renewed fairly shortly. And there's also an AGM coming up, so there'll be an opportunity for councils to think about who their representatives are and rejuvenate the group.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors? No. Moving on to item 12, which is general business, and I'll start on my left with Councillor Janus.
None from me tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you. Just one for me. The Paul Punker op shop will be closing in 2 weeks. It is very sad to see it go, and the community feedback that we've received since we made the announcement, the support's been amazing, and the stories that people have said over the years, almost 8 years that we've been open. So a massive big shout out to the volunteer group that have made that such an amazing space. I urge you all, if you can, please come and see us over the next 2 weeks, because there's still quite a lot of stuff that's in there. And unfortunately, with these things, we will reduce and reuse where we can, but there will be a level of things having to be disposed of at the end of it using the funds that we have left. Also, just to note that there if there's community groups that are looking for new jerseys and different things like that, that we're open for discussion about that as well. So massive congratulations to the volunteers. I think it's a stellar effort of everybody involved over the last 8 years. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well done.
Councillor Keeble.
Just to thank Councillor Prime for being online. I see 2 faces there on the screen. One's not moving, one's moving around, but thanks for being gone from car to car, and I don't know where you are now, but well done.
Thank you. Councillor Prime, any general business?
No, none from me. My laptop died at 8 p.m. on the dot, so I've done a quick switch to a different screen. But I did not account for such a long meeting tonight with my battery, so well done everyone in person.
You've done well to get back online in less than 2 minutes. Well done. Councillor Nicholas.
Yep, a couple of things. I actually forgot to mention in the congratulations, but it's just as relevant here. At the end of the winter, the resort management staff walked the road from Hotham both directions picking up rubbish. And part of it looks a lot better. Part of the reason I raised it is because, well, I think that they deserve congratulations, but also just pick it up if you see it. What you walk past, what you accept. So if you don't like having rubbish lying around, then pick it up. And maybe join some of those groups that do picking up. Stay to Wonga Gap's a pretty regular one. The other thing I wanted to raise is the short stay local law community engagement. Get on board and answer the survey and give us your stories.
Yes. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor. Just 2 items. Firstly, summer readiness. This Saturday is the Mount Beauty picnic. You're all oriented around getting yourself ready for summer and fire safety. Get along. And secondly, also last Friday in Mount Beauty was the launch of the 72-hour, I'll call it a campaign. 72 hours is about preparing your household for what you would do for 3 days if you were in an emergency, whether that's you're still at home but you're isolated, no power, no water, or for 3 days you are no longer at home and you are in temporary accommodation or whatever the case may be. So having your household ready to deal with 72 hours of emergency is really important. Firstly, it prompts the conversation about what you do, but secondly, it eases the pressure on our emergency services. It is in those first couple of days when they are most in demand and needed, and the more we can do to not require them and know our own plan is really valued by them. And just lastly, Mayor, I did want to mention, since our last meeting, another armed conflict has emerged on our planet, unfortunately. And I guess I just wanted to simply say, there'll be folk in our community who are mourning the tragic loss of life there, and really no politics other than to say, there is a tragic loss of life going on. The numbers are extraordinary, and urging for a speedy ceasefire.
Thank you. Just following up on that 72 hours, the kits for people for homes, are they available in VICs, the libraries, front desk?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. They're available almost everywhere, but we're also going to be delivering them into people's letterboxes as well. So each household will receive an envelope with the table talk that they can undertake with their families and friends.
With 2 tea bags.
With 2 tea bags.
Well done. Thank you.
Table tea?
Yeah, I think it's just good old yellow label Lipton's or something. All right. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. General business.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. One very quick one from me. I imagine there are members of our community who are eagerly awaiting the next update on the Bright Valley development. My team advised me today that we're heading into the final straits. We've got responses back from all the referral agencies, and we're in the administrative process now of just documenting a recommendation to Council. If there are no further hiccups, our expectation at this stage is we'll be bringing it before Council for a decision at the next Council meeting, which is Tuesday the 21st of November. That meeting is currently scheduled in Myrtleford, but we will be seeking Council support to move that meeting into Bright, if that's the case that we're going to bring that particular report into the meeting. That's all. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. No general business from me. Item 13, motions for which notice has previously been given. We have none on the table tonight. Reception and readings of petitions, item 14, we have none of those. Item 15, documents for sealing. The recommendations are we have two documents. One is both are Section 173 agreements. We have three, and also the planning officer. Thank you, Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Janus. Those in favour, please. Thank you. That has been carried unanimously. And there being no further business, I will declare this meeting closed at 8:07. And thank you all for attending, and thank you for attending.